how are you? Jason. Hi, sir. Good to see you. Yeah, welcome. Jason, how are you?
Hey.
Good to see you again.
Yeah,
So you guys are doing the domestic violence stuff. I'll have Mike Brandstetter come up and present proclamation with you. Retired Command Sergeant Major, so that would be appropriate, you know. And then we'll do a photograph after the proclamation. Have all of them.
I don't have to be in.
Yes, you do. So Mike will read the proclamation after I announce it, and you guys can say whatever you want to say. Give a little bit of what's going on from your perspective. That'll be great. Good. Welcome again. Thanks. All right. Yep.
My favorite job was being chief of assistance. But I think I really liked the SVC gig. So I was an SVC for 3 years. So I really liked that.
Legal office NYC at Fort Hays.
Ability to.
Yeah. I'll probably use Dawn's to start.
I'm sure when they're 9 months.
Yeah, yeah. You're very welcome. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If we can have the council members come to the dais, we'll call the Lakewood City Council session for Monday, October 1, 2018 to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barth. Councilmember Simpson. Councilmember Brandstetter. Councilmember Moss. Deputy Mayor Whalen.
Present.
Mayor Anderson has been excused, and Councilmember Boki will be attending later this evening. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Please join me as we rise and give salute to our nation's flag, preceded by a moment of silence in honor of our nation's military members serving here and abroad. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you very much and welcome. It is a rainy evening. You can't imagine spending a better opportunity with your evening than with us tonight, so thank you for coming. We now go into the proclamations and presentations portion of tonight's agenda. First, we have the proclamation declaring October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and for that we have Major Amanda Walburn and Lieutenant Colonel John Longley from the I-Corps Office of the Judge Advocate, and they will accompany Councilmember Michael Brandstetter, retired Sergeant Major, to the podium.
City of Lakewood proclamation. Whereas the City of Lakewood believes that domestic violence in all forms, whether involving assaults, dating violence, stalking, violation of protection orders, or other manner of violence, negatively impacts individuals, families, and the community. And whereas the City of Lakewood understands in particular the adverse impact on a child who is present, witnesses, or is aware of domestic violence in the home or in the family, and can be both immediate and lifelong. Whereas the City of Lakewood recognizes that the epidemic of domestic violence is about more than relationship problems or family issues. Rather than issues that carries immediate and long-term adverse effects for victims, families, schools, and workplaces that can last for generations, as well as for first responders, the criminal justice system, domestic violence service advocates, and service providers. And whereas from January 1, 2018 through August 31, 2018, the City of Lakewood Legal Department, on behalf of the citizens of Lakewood, University Place, Steilacoom, and DuPont, filed 477 domestic violence cases, an average about 60 cases a month, including 36 cases of exposing minor child to domestic violence, while recognizing these figures reflect only crimes that have been reported, are likely well below the actual occurrence rate for these crimes. And whereas in an effort to not only hold violent members of the society accountable for acts of domestic violence, but also in an effort to provide assistance to victims and families exposed to domestic violence, the City of Lakewood remains committed to a collaborative effort between city law enforcement and prosecution, as well as other entities, both civilian and military, providing support and advocacy for domestic violence victims and their families, ensuring those individuals receive support, assistance, and information to educate, protect, and ultimately eliminate acts of domestic violence. Now, therefore, the Lakewood City Council hereby proclaims October 2018 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the City of Lakewood and urges all citizens to join us in recognizing domestic violence as a crime with impact on individuals, families, and our community, and with the ultimate goal of educating, protecting, and ultimately reducing and eliminating acts of domestic violence. Proclaim this first day of October 2018, Don Anderson, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, council members. Been in the military for a while, and I've just been very touched and amazed at the relationship between JBLM and the supporting communities. Maybe one of the better relationships I've seen in my time in the military. And we very much appreciate that support. It's an exciting time right now in the military, particularly with regard to getting after domestic violence. Some of you may know that there's been some significant changes made to the military system on how we deal with domestic violence. Starting January 1st, 2019, the military for the first time will have a domestic violence specific offense, whereby domestic violence offenses will be viewed as an enhanced factor for purposes of determining punishment of an accused. This is something very important to us. And again, we appreciate all the support you've given us in the community to help us keep our soldiers and their families safe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If you would join us for a photograph, we'll have our communications director make sure we preserve a little history. You're part of the team. And now we'll enjoy a proclamation declaring October as Food Literacy Month. And for this, Sarah Morris, who is the president of Beecher's Foundation, would be here tonight, but she's at home with a sick child. So we will enjoy having Ms. Helen McGovern-Pilot, project manager for the Lakewood Initiative for the Beecher's Foundation project, join me and Youth Council member Dante Ost at the podium. I brought a member of the Youth Council up because when it comes to food, I know teenagers are all into food, and this is important. The City of Lakewood issues this proclamation, whereas food literacy is defined as the understanding of the impact of food choices on health, community, and the environment. And
whereas our food choices affect our health, for example, obesity-related conditions that are the leading cause of preventable early death, and
whereas our food choices affect the environment, when food items are sold in a more direct way, such as farmers markets, that decreases the demand on transportation. And
whereas a broad approach to nutritional and culinary education is vital to ensure that all Lakewood residents make healthier food choices, and
whereas partnerships with schools, youth and family serving organizations, private foundations, public health, and philanthropic institutions are the key to keeping Lakewood's promise to youth and ensuring that Lakewood families thrive. And
whereas the Lakewood community has demonstrated a history of coming together to serve youth in our city, and
whereas the Beecher's Foundation is expanding their efforts to improve food literacy among Lakewood children, youth, and families through its Pure Food Kits program. And
whereas the Pure Foods Kids project promotes food education, inspires food choices that are good for families and good for the environment, as well as encourages young people to choose healthier food options.
And now, therefore, the Lakewood City Council, as well as members of the Lakewood's Youth Council, we proclaim the month of October as Food Literacy Month here in the city of Lakewood, and we urge all citizens to join us in becoming more aware of healthy food options. Proclaim this first day of October 2018, Don Anderson, Mayor. And one of my favorite people is here tonight to accept this proclamation, one of my all-time faves, Helen McGovern-Pilot.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
Here. You might want to say a few little things. Brendan can take a photograph and then we'll all get down together, but I'll let you chat a little bit. I know you
Okay.
wanted to say something. We'll get
Great.
Dante, come on in here.
Thanks, Brent. Thank you. Well, it's always lovely I sort of feel like I'm come back home when I come here. So thank you very much for the lovely proclamation. Deputy Mayor, City Council, I'm going to read a message from Sarah. She's sorry she can't be here. She's the president of the Beecher's Foundation. And she said that the Beecher's Foundation is proud and honored to accept this proclamation. We value our partnership with the City of Lakewood and the opportunity to provide food and nutrition education to its residents. Individually and collectively, you do essential work enhancing the quality of life in Lakewood. We are delighted to bring new resources to the community in support of these efforts, and thank you for proclaiming October Food Literacy Month and for welcoming us into the community. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of what's going to happen, that there will be the students at Lakeview Hope Academy, Tyee Park, and Clover Park High School They've been selected to partner with Beecher's Foundation, and they'll bring a vital nutrition education and cooking skills to the students and the families. When you take the class, you're going to learn that you can really cook affordable meals really easily if you plan them and if you have the correct tools. And so they'll help people find out that if you don't need a sharp knife that you pay $80 for, you can get a lovely knife that someone else gave to Goodwill and sharpen it up, and there you go for about $4 or $5. So they'll give you a lot of skills on reading labels, understanding ingredient lists, identifying marketing tactics, and cooking a tasty vegetarian chili right in the class. And then beginning in October, they're going to have classes at the Lakeview Boys and Girls Club for parents of the children of the elementary, middle school, and high school, and also community members. So any of you can come and take an advantage of this class. It's a 4-hour class. It's on Tuesdays and Saturdays, October and November. And if you attend the class, you'll learn how to do these things. You'll get a full meal cooked for you. You get a $10 gift certificate to a grocery outlet. And so you can sign up at any of the schools, or you can go on Beecher's Foundation /Lakewood and sign up there. And if you sign up and then you bring 4 of your friends, you can get a $25 gift certificate to grocery outlet. So we're going to support our local stores and learn how to do healthy food. And we'd invite anybody in the city council or the city to join them as well. So this is a wonderful opportunity. They've done their pilot program here, and they hope to expand in the area to all the other schools to let folks know how to eat healthy. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Sure.
Oh, no, good job. Next, I believe Linda Smith, President of the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce, has an award she'd like to present, the Ambassador of the Year Award. And I believe, Linda, this is all yours.
Hi,
Hello.
Linda Smith with the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much for inviting me here this evening. Like the city, the Chamber's success hinges on active volunteerism, and that's why my presentation this evening is especially meaningful. We have a team of volunteers called the Ambassadors Club, and based on a point system, we recognize the best of the best at our annual meeting and installation banquet. Mayor Anderson was there to install our officers and board members with a hard hat and some sort of a drilling piece of equipment. I was afraid of it, so I stayed away from him. But we were honored to have him at the annual meeting. Unfortunately, our recipient couldn't be there, and so I'm proud to be here this evening to present this award. This ambassador is a warrior at heart. Throughout the year, this person has attended general membership luncheons, blue ribbon cuttings, business after hours, made visitation calls, and has been faithful in promoting the importance of the Lakewood Chamber to the local business community. In addition, this individual has great working knowledge of the functions and programs of the Chamber and is happy to offer her knowledge about the organization and what we do. Consequently, this ambassador has earned the most points for 2017 and 18. I am delighted to announce the Lakewood Chamber's Ambassador of the Year, Becky Newton, Economic Development Manager for the City of Lakewood. Becky, we thank you for your hard work.
Congratulations. That's great. Did you want us to come down, or? Sure. Okay, all right. Let's do it. Okay, good job, Becky. Next, we're pleased to have our youth council report, and Dante, you're at it again.
Good evening. My name is Dante Ost, and I'm representing the Youth Council tonight. So at our last meeting, we kind of brainstormed an idea about doing a youth summit here at City Hall. So it's pretty much like a conference where we'll have workshops and motivational speakers and be able to network with each other. And Lanice is passing you out the information. So the four main ideas that we kind of came to an agreement on were either doing a youth leadership, adulting 101, the environment or well-being youth summit, with adulting 101 being the most popular among the youth council, with youth leadership and well-being being second place. So I'm assuming that in the next coming meetings, we will be talking more about each one and which one we're gonna come to a decision on. And we're hoping to achieve this by early of 2019, so that way we're able to do this soon. So, yeah.
That's great. Fantastic.
Any questions?
Any questions of members of council? It looks like a fantastic program, and certainly anything we can do to support the Youth Summit brainstorm, to the extent we've got brains to storm, would be happy to participate, so just let us know. Anything else, folks? That's it? Anything else?
School reports.
Very good.
Hi, I'm Peyton Gomez, and I'll be representing Covenant High School. So last Wednesday through Friday, we went on our overnight field trip to Fort Flagler, and it's really just a time for all the classes to bond and the underclassmen to get to know the underclassmen. This Friday, we're having our Honor Society induction ceremony for the sophomores to join our National Honor Society at our school. Also, next week, we will be starting our Change Wars, which is the boys and the girls at our school competing to see who can raise the most money for a local charity. And at the end of the Change Wars, we will be having our harvest party, which is kind of like our celebration at the end of October where we all get to dress up. And we'll be having a pieing of a teacher who is willing. And that's it. So.
That sounds good. We might be able to come up with a retired teacher to help out with the pine. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Celeste Zinn, and I am a junior at Lakes High School, and I will be presenting our school report. To begin, we have PSAT and ASVAB testing on October 10th. That is a purple day for us, so students who are not participating in testing will be part of other academically structured activities. And that is a Wednesday. Our homecoming dance is on October 13th, and we will have a spirit week leading up to the dance. Our theme is Under the Sea. On October 24th, we will be having an HIB assembly for the freshmen put on by ASB. It's harassment, intimidation, bullying, and it's to help raise awareness. And then also our fall sports will be ending this month unless there are teams that continue on through league competitions and to state, in which case they will end mid-November. And with that, I conclude my school report.
Hello, I'm Susan Cosillo Trujillo, and I'll be representing Clover Park High School. And tomorrow we'll be having a blood drive, and then on Friday we'll be having the homecoming assembly, as well as a homecoming tailgate and the homecoming football game. And then this Saturday will be the homecoming, which our theme this year is Bright Lights, Big City. This week we're also currently having our Spirit Week in order to get spirited for homecoming. And then Clover Park will be hosting the SAT testing this Saturday. And we are also beginning to prepare for the Anti-Harassment, Intimidation, and Bullying Assembly, where people will be sharing their experiences in order to bring attention to these issues. And we have begun to prepare for We Scare Hunger, which is a food drive. Thank you. Hi, my name's Lenise Kamak, and I'm going to be representing Harrison Prep today. As of today, first quarter ended, so me as well as every other fellow Puma should be looking forward to mid-quarter report cards by the end of the week. As well as we just started our We Act campaign for We Scare Hunger. As well as our student council meetings have just started to take off. And that is pretty much all that's going on at HP, as well as PSAT testing on the 10th for all the juniors. Yep.
Fantastic.
That is our report for this evening.
Well, thank you very much. You have lots on your plate. Thank you for serving on the Lakewood Youth Council and for participating in all the citizen advisory boards as liaisons. We appreciate it. Oh, I have to mention something about your jackets. Dante, tell us about the Red Jacket Brigade. How did this come about?
Well, at our very first meeting, we were deciding about colors, and our color options were navy blue, gray, mint, but overall red won.
Very nice. I like it over mint. Yeah, much better choice. Well, thank you all. Appreciate you coming tonight. We appreciate it. Oh, did you have a comment, Ms. Moss?
Thank you. Thanks for the report, and I apologize, I didn't catch your name, but you talked about the fundraiser and the competition. You?
Peyton.
Yes. Yes. I was just curious as to how long was the competition going to be?
It's gonna be the start of next week and until the 26th of October.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Well, thank you again for coming. We appreciate it. Next on the agenda would be the Clover Park School District report. We do not have a director on hand tonight, so we will move next to the public comment portion of tonight's agenda. And I note the first individual listed on the sign-in sheet to speak to council during the public comment is Representative Dick Murray. I take a moment of personal privilege. We always recognize our electeds who come to city council member meetings. Dick Murray is our 28th District Legislative Representative, one of two. And he is first to have signed in on the sign-up sheet. And before Mr. Murray starts, I just want to remind everyone that members of the audience may comment on items related to any matter related to city business under this public comment period. So if you signed in on the sign-up sheet, great. If you didn't, that's okay. You can still come to the podium when the time is ripe to address the council during this public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual. Groups who have at least 3 members present at the meeting may designate a speaking agent for the group, and you have up to 10 minutes to speak. The lights are on the podium, so if you get a chance to see the green go closer to red, there's yellow, that means your time is very, very close, 30 seconds, so you want to wrap it up. And with that, Representative Murray, you are first on the sign-in sheet.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Whalen and the rest of the council members. I'm here to talk about the adult family home businesses here in Lakewood. I call them businesses, even though I guess basically the way they're regulated is not like a business, and that is the challenge we have. It'd be nice if between now and the start of the legislative session, we can come up with maybe a proposed list of laws at the state and the federal level that need to be changed so that give more tools in the toolbox for the city of Lakewood. And it would also be nice information to know how many adult family homes are in Lakewood and what year do they start? You know, I remember it was probably 15, 20 years ago when we had 1 or 2 or 3 in Lakewood and mainly in Oak Brook, the ones I most knew about. But it just seemed to be growing over time. And at what point does these businesses, which are doing a good service, you know, for our elderly and sometimes other types of people that need assistance, have grown really large? When a residential neighborhood has too many of those, it stops becoming a residential neighborhood. I also have a big concern. There's a big push to get a lot of those sex offenders that are currently at McNeil Island undergoing therapy to get them off the island and get them in residential homes here in the state of Washington. Unfortunately, it's hard to open one of these homes because you have to have the therapists and the support services that go with it, and there's not many of those around here in the state of Washington, so they end up coming close to where we are here with the Western State Hospital. So my fear is that we're going to see a lot of these homes that are for the elderly or maybe developmentally disabled now being used for sex offenders. We need to find a way that we can not only stop those from happening, but also make sure that the fair share laws that are supposed to be in place in the state of Washington are enacted. I think we need to work closely with the governors and the governor's office. A lot of things that the legislature can't do that are code that is put into place by the DSHS and through the governor's executive privilege. So let's think about what kind of tools in the toolbox we can do for 2019. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure our staff and the city manager will be happy to oblige with information and details on our legislative policy manual and agenda forthcoming. Next on the sign-in sheet to address the council during public comment is, my glasses out here, Robert Moshkatel. Is that correct? Did I pronounce that correctly, sir? Actually, you have yes and no circled, so it's totally your choice. Yeah. Well, you're welcome to. Yeah, no problem. Becky Huber would be next on the list.
Becky Huber, Lakewood resident, Deputy Mayor Whalen, council members and staff. Excuse me, I'm here to invite you to our 20th anniversary celebration of the Lakewood Historical Society. A number of you, I believe, have already gotten your invitations, and I wanted to pass out the commemorative bookmarks that we have made for the event. I also have the poster and flyer. It was actually designed by a student at Clover Park Tech in the graphics department, and that was coordinated with our new board member, Daryl Owens, who instructs that class. And the theme is the history in the area of where the campus is, and of course the more interesting one for me is the Tacoma Speedway. And there's a particular character who not only raced here, but was here, I guess, just about every time between 1912 to 1922, and that was Barney Oldfield, who was renowned to have been the mile-a-minute man, which means he was the first man who was clocked at 60 miles an hour. Now, that doesn't seem very fast to us now, but that was 1904, that was a big deal. And we still have commemorative coins for the Speedway that we'll be selling at the event at cost. We celebrated the centennial of 6 years ago. It will be held in the rotunda on the campus of Clover Park Technical College. We have fabulous food, And we have Doug Richardson as our MC, Denny Heck as our keynote speaker, and we'll be awarding the Cyrus Happy III Historian Award to Dr. Jerry Ramsey. And the tickets are $40. They're still on sale for another 2 weeks. The event, again, is on October 23rd from 5 to 8 p.m. in the Rotunda. And if you're interested, I will not be staying for the council meeting, but Glenn Spieth, another one of our board members, would be happy to answer questions. And you can also go to our website, lakewoodhistorical.org, for more information. So I hope to see you there. It will be a very special occasion. And it's hard to believe we're already celebrating our 20th anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the sign-in sheet to potentially address the council, Louis Pedraza. Did you want to speak, Louis? You're on the list. You're welcome to speak.
Good evening. My name is Louis Pedraza, and I reside at the 7112 Turquoise Drive, and I'm about 2 or 3 houses from where we have supposedly one of the new homes that is impacting our area. And of course, we have been meeting lately in order to see how we can proceed and what kind of help we get from the city, and how can we approach the state legislature in order to resolve a solution, because I understand that the legislature right now is kind of a gray line, and it's vague, it's not clear, and I heard that the city here has made recommendations, but your hands are tied up with the state. That's my understanding. My question, I have 2 questions really. And one is, I understand there's a moratorium active right now, and the moratorium is for 6 months, is that correct?
Well, we'll go ahead and get your comment, Louis, and then we'll give you some feedback, but I can tell you the moratorium was struck down by the court a couple of Fridays ago. So the moratorium is no longer officially in place. The moratorium was in place. We filed a lawsuit. The city of Lakewood lost that lawsuit 2 Fridays ago.
Oh, okay. I'm struck by the zoning laws here in Lakewood. The definition of one of these adult homes, and is it my understanding that if you have a business, a home business here in the city within the city of Lakewood, it's a violation, is that correct? Can you run a business in a residential area?
Well, I will certainly talk to you offline, Louis, because we know where to find one another, but this is the period where we receive the comment from the public, and so specific questions we take note of, and we try to get back to you after the public comment period, but I will certainly get back to you that.
I think he's telling me to go away.
I would never tell you that, Louis. I know your daughter too well. Yeah, but your time is done. But I will certainly get back to you on that question. And I know there are lots of folks here who have questions and concerns, and I believe the city will be sending out some notice about a town meeting, if you will, that we will hold in the Oak Brook neighborhood, I believe at the Oak Brook Country Club? No, not at the Oak Brook. At the Elks Club. Right. And more to follow on that. So that fine question, as well as any others, will be addressed at that time, because we plan to have, I believe the city attorney will be there to address certain questions, certainly the city manager, and we will address your questions as well as I'm sure many others that are similarly on the minds of all the Oak Brook residents. But thank you for your concern,
Okay, thank you.
and I will give you a call. Next on the sign-in sheet is Nolan Soot? Soti, yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, Nolan Sodi, Lakewood resident for about 11 years. Recently moved into Oak Brook in March. I was at the city council meeting during this summer, when you guys decided to sue the state, DSHS. I thank you for that, okay? I understand that, and every single one of you spoke up and said that you don't agree with any more group homes in Lakewood. In fact, we have 7% of Pierce County population, you said, and 28% of the overall group home population in Pierce County. So it doesn't add up. And you got it handed to you in court, I understand that. But if you truly believe, I guess the challenge would be, if you truly believe that sex offenders do not belong in a residential area, then you should do what it takes to appeal the lawsuit. If we can afford $250,000 for an upgrade at a dog park, like Representative Murray said at the Elks Club meeting a week ago, then we can afford to appeal a lawsuit that we lost because we actually believe in what we're fighting for. I got 2 young girls. I live 2 houses down from this group home where they're going to stick the sex offenders. I got a neighbor across the street, has 2 young kids. There's young kids everywhere. And it's not just about children here. It's about any normal person, okay? The average family in Lakewood. Okay, my argument is they should not be in residential areas. And that's what I'm hearing from my neighbors is the same thing. So where I'm coming from is I sat in here this summer, you challenged the state, you sued the state and lost. And Representative Boki was at the meeting last week at the Elks Club, and he said, well, we don't know if we're going to appeal because we got it handed to us in court. Well, if you have enough guts and you really believe in something, then you take the next step and you appeal. And during that time period, the mayor, who I agree with 100% about his comments on the governor, who said the governor's going to have blood on his hands. I agree with that 100%. If he truly believes that, quit having a bunch of Joe Schmoes like myself get the media involved and do something about it. And maybe you plan on doing that at the meeting here in October. But I've been on the news twice. I don't like being on the news, okay? And like I said, I'm not necessarily mad at you guys, but if the mayor stands up here and he says it with conviction that the governor's going to have blood on his hands, then he needs to do something about it and back it up. According to my knowledge, he's the highest ranking official right here in this room. Well, then the heat should be coming from him. He should be organizing the media. Okay, I don't want to wait around to the next governor's race to solve this problem. And I'd feel the same way if it wasn't in my neighborhood.
Thank you for your comments, and I would encourage you to take the time to speak with one of your elected representatives to the state legislature, Representative Murray, when you have a moment outside of public comment. Those are all the individuals who have signed up to speak to council during this public comment session. But as I indicated, that doesn't limit you. If there are any other individuals who would like to speak to the council during the public comment portion of tonight's meeting, you are free to do so. So feel free to line up to the podium. Are there any other members of the public who wish to address the council during public comment? If not, I'll declare the public comment period closed. We now turn to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of September 10th, 2018. B, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of September 17th, 2018. C, approval of payroll checks in the amount of $2,368,447.58 for the period of August 16th, 2018 through September 15th, 2018. D, approval of claims vouchers in the amount of $2,760,257.81 for the period of August 22nd, 2018 through September 14th, 2018. E, motion number 2018-55, reappointing Susan Dellinger to serve on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board through September 19th, 2021. F, motion number 2018-56, appointing Leanna Christian to serve on the Lakewoods Promise Advisory Board through May 21, 2021. G, motion number 2018-57, appointing Youth Council Member Kenneth Prince to serve on the Lakewoods Promise Advisory Board for the 2018 to 2019 school year. H, motion number 2018-58, authorizing the execution of an amendment to the agreement with Reed Trucking and Excavating, increasing spending in the amount of $275,879.27 for the South Tacoma Way, Silicon Boulevard to 88th Street improvements. I, motion number 2018-59, authorizing the execution of an amendment to the agreement with Amaya Electric, increasing spending in the amount of $13,144.30 for the 2017 citywide electrical repair project. J, items filed in the Office of the City Clerk. 1, Community Service Advisory Board meeting minutes of June 20th, 2018, and 2, Planning Commission meeting minutes of August 15th, 2018.
Did you want to repeat that? Everyone get that? Well, thank you very much. Is there any item on the consent agenda which any council member wishes to have removed? If not, do I have a motion to adopt a consent agenda as presented?
So moved, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Simpson and seconded by Councilmember Barth that we adopt the consent agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, all signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda is adopted. We now move to the regular agenda, to ordinances. Ordinance number 695. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance number 695, adopting the downtown sub-area plan as an element of the comprehensive plan, amending the Lakewood Municipal Code by establishing a new title, 18B, Downtown Development Code, amending Lakewood Municipal Code Chapters 18A.02 Administration, 18A.20 Land Use Types and Levels, 18A.50 Development Standards, and 18A.90 Definitions, and amending the Lakewood Comprehensive Plan and Land Use Map.
Thank you very much for this. We are calling on, it appears to be Ms. Spear and/or Mr. Buer.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Tiffany Spear, Special Projects with the Community Development Department. I'm going to just very briefly introduce this to you. This is actually the 10th time that it's come before you. And I'm going to talk about both ordinances, 695 and 696, since they are companion to each other regarding the downtown sub-area plan. To date, the City Council has held study sessions about the plan and its associated documents on April 9th, July 9th, 23rd, and 30th, August 13th, September 10th, 17th, and 24th, and then a public hearing was held on July 16th. Ordinance 695 and its attachments would adopt the downtown sub-area plan itself, the development code that accompanies it, comprehensive plan amendments related to the plan, and then there are also additional amendments to Lakewood Municipal Code Title 18A. And assuming that moves forward, you would also be considering tonight Ordinance 696, which is the Downtown Sub-Area Planned Action Ordinance, or the environmental impact analysis done ahead of time. So should projects move forward within the range anticipated by that environmental analysis, those individual projects in the downtown area would not have to go through their own environmental analysis. Once adopted, the downtown plan would go into effect 30 days later. And then, assuming it goes forward, you will have, as part of your 2019-2020 budget, information and proposed fees for transportation mitigation projects within the downtown area. And then there was a desire to include every 2 years an opportunity for the council to review not only those fees with the budget, but also the plan as a whole and decide if there were any changes that you felt were needed in the regulations or the policies. So in 2020, that would be coming for the council again. Should the council take action and adopt the downtown sub-area plan and the other associated documents, staff will contact the Puget Sound Regional Council to look at amending the Lakewood Regional Urban Center boundaries to be contiguous and conterminous with the downtown sub-area plan, and that's been discussed by the council at several of your study sessions. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much. Do we have questions of Ms. Spear on ordinance number 695? If not, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 695?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Simpson and seconded by Councilmember Barth that we adopt ordinance number 695. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Simpson, and then Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So the 10th time is the charm, is that what you're telling us?
I guess so.
All right, well, listen, I want to say that I appreciate the work that the citizens of this city brought to this. I appreciate the work that city staff has done with it. And I appreciate the work that the council has done with this. In particular, I'd like to note that I greatly admire the work of Mike Brandstetter, whose questions were probing and accurate and resulted in clarity for all of us. I have every intention of voting in favor of this, and I'm doing this because, and this is going to sound, I know, a little odd, but then again, you all know me. I don't watch much television, but I do watch a lot of movies because I look for plot and character and so on and so forth. And one of the series that I've watched are the Avengers, the 16 or 17 movies where there are the Infinity Stones, and there's Thanos, and there's Iron Man, and there's Hulk, and then there's Mr. Bueller. And then there's one character by the name of Doctor Strange. And Doctor Strange, and Mr. Bueller is nodding his head in affirmation, so he knows who I'm talking about. And Doctor Strange is a brilliant surgeon who loses the ability to perform surgery. And he goes on this quest to basically, the initial action is to regain what he lost. But along the way, he becomes part of this whole Avenger motif. And he becomes a magician. And he has the ability to create holes in time in which people can move in and out. What I'm leading up to here is that we are creating a hole in time, 20 years in the distance, and we are moving forward for all of the right reasons. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
You're very welcome. Mr. Brandstetter? Next.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and I'll thank Councilmember Simpson for his comments. That while this is 18 months in the doing, this is effort that's well positioned us to do that. And while we might call this a downtown area plan, that it's actually code. And one of the axioms that was given to me when I was first elected to the council was, if you have a vision for what you would like the city to be, that you don't get the city that you'd like to have, you get the city that you put in code. And I think that we have made a really good effort in order to have a clear and flexible regulatory set of codes that will guide the development. And I don't say it's not necessarily the development in the downtown, it's the development to have a downtown. And we're, looking at that, and it's something for us to keep an eye on to move forward. But I think that, this is an essential step that is going to create things to do that. And our role as a council going forward is, we're not the developers that will do that, but we do have a lot of influence on some of the catalyst sites that this plan indicates are going to be the nodes around which development takes place. And so I'm looking forward to seeing this change with expectations and patience as to how this will go. I think I'm excited about some of the things that are in motion already, such as getting a plaza at Motor Avenue. That is both a place to hold events, but also an informal gathering place on a daily basis. of our work with the library district to be able to move forward to do those sorts of things. And the updates to the Parks Legacy Plan that will deal with a Green Street loop and an eventual Central Park here to do that. You know, we've made some, so I think that our action today is going to be a very, very positive, long-remembered step that when folks look back on us, you know, this will be a day of when the direction for the downtown area of this city turned in the right direction. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Any other comments by members of the council? Ms. Barth.
Okay, this is it there, it's on. Wasn't going to say anything. I will say thank you very much for all your hard work. It's very much appreciated. When I voted for the city many, many, many years ago, this is what I had in mind. We're just about 20 years slow in getting there. I've learned patience. I've learned that it's a process, and I'm very excited. So I will be voting in favor of it. And again, thank you, Ms. Spears. And are you over there? Okay, I don't know where she. Oh, there she is. Okay, thank you very much for all your hard work. I really do appreciate it.
I want to echo the thanks to staff and to the manager for all their hard work on this. I know it's been a project a long time coming, and certainly took some detours and stops and starts along the way, but I think, as Mr. Simpson mentioned, all for good reason, because I think that the product is better for it. And as Ms. Barth indicated, you know, in 1996, we incorporated as a city. We emerged from a suburb and became a city. And with this plan that we're going to adopt tonight, I think we're finally on a path to realizing the vision, what people had some 22 years ago now, to really become a city with a sense of place and identity. Not that it didn't have it. We certainly have great historical underpinnings and lots to be proud of, but this just takes us that great many steps forward that we all have hoped to take through our time in service here. I think others are taking note. You saw in the article that perhaps came out from the Economic Development Board for Tacoma Pierce County that we were the byline article in the newsletter that went out today to the entire business community. Lakewood Has a Plan was the title. And to me, that is a wonderful thing to see, because it broadcasts all the work that all of us, all of the staff, all of the leadership, the council members, not just us, but others that came before us, have put into place to take the ball forward. And for that, we have much to be thankful for. But we have now set the table as best we can, and our role now is to continue to be the good cheerleaders and stewards as we can be to further develop what we have by way of infrastructure to the best of our ability, but it's private industry that's going to have to take the ball forward. So my wish is that the downtown sub-area plan not be yet another plan or aspirational code that sits on a shelf, but it becomes a very much a living, breathing document that provides a roadmap for success. So with that, unless there are any other further comments, all those in favor of adopting ordinance number 695 with relish, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance number 695 has been adopted. We now turn to ordinance 696, and it will be followed by 697. So I know you don't want to repeat yourself, but Ms. Spear, Mr. Buer, we're taking these sequentially. This is on you.
Thank you once again, Tiffany Spear. Ordinance 696, as I mentioned, is companion to 695. This ordinance is specifically the planned action ordinance for the downtown sub-area. So this is where there's been anticipated development analyzed from an environmental standpoint. So as individual projects or development agreements come forward, however this happens over the next 20 plus years, the environmental analysis will have already been done, and there will be a streamlined process for those applicants and for the city. So assuming that the sentiment remains the same as it was about 30 seconds ago, hopefully this will be passing tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Ms. Spear? Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 696? It's been moved by Councilmember Moss and seconded by Councilmember Barth that we adopt ordinance 696. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ordinance 696 has been adopted. We now turn to ordinance 697. And for this, again, we have Mr. Buer or Ms. Spear, or Mr. Buer and Ms. Spear.
Ordinance number 697, repealing substitute ordinance 689 and amending Title 18A, the Land Use and Development Code, modifying regulation of motor vehicle sales and rental establishments.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this project began with the adoption of interim regulations by the City Council on motor vehicle sales and rental businesses on July 2nd, 2018. On July 16th, following the July 2nd action, the council conducted a public hearing on those interim regulations. On July 18th, the Planning Commission conducted a study session and received background information on the City Council's action. On August the 15th, Planning Commission conducted a second public hearing. Commission also made recommendations to the City Council on proposed changes to the zoning code. That was done through a recommendation and a resolution of the Commission. On September 10th, the City Council received the Commission's recommendations. On September 17th, the City Council conducted another public hearing. And this evening, on October 1st, the City Council is set to adopt an ordinance making final changes to the zoning code for motor vehicle sales and rental businesses, and in essence, extinguishing the interim regulations. A very quick summary of the changes: it prohibits motor vehicle sales and rental activity in the NC2 zoning district. That area is found along Steilacoom Boulevard, Custer Road, Union Avenue, and Bridgeport Way. The other change allows existing motor vehicle sales and rental activity to continue on South Tacoma Way and Pacific Highway, which has been the historical location for those businesses. However, there have been some new performance criteria for motor vehicle sales being proposed as a part of the ordinance, and one of the more important criterion establishes a minimum lot area of 20,000 square feet. We have found through this process the city has a large number of very small postage stamp car lots in the city of Lakewood, and it was deemed to have a larger lot than some of the small ones that we have currently. Mr. Mayor and council members, that ends my presentation, and I'm here to take any questions that you may have.
Any questions of Mr. Buer on this? So I had a quick question for you, just to kind of jog our collective memory. If we're, by passing this ordinance precluding those types of motor vehicle sales and rental establishments in the NC1 district, right?
NC2.
NC2, okay, and that includes Steilacoom Boulevard and Custer.
Yes.
So there are some existing.
Yes, those businesses have become legal non-conforming uses.
And once they close down or change use, then the motor vehicle component is no longer allowed.
That's true, pursuant to our non-conforming use regulations in 18A as they are currently written.
Okay. What about the existing use? Not sure whether it's motor vehicle sales, rentals, or repair on Gravelly Lake and Mount Tacoma. Have we determined whether that's repair or a non-conforming use?
That is neither. That is an illegal use, and both CSRT and Community Development are taking action upon that. There are pending citations for the activity. It's a combination of a vehicle level 4, which is not permitted in the CBD zone. It is also a junkyard, it is also illegal storage, it is also illegal property maintenance regulations. So there's a whole series of violations, and I believe that CSRT is working on trying to resolve that.
Very good. Councilmember Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. In our efforts, are we precluding grandfathering in the ones that are there?
The ones that are there can stay.
If they want to sell, because we had this incident with other businesses in Lakewood where we got grandfathered them in.
You're referring to pawn shops, yes. If there's a change in ownership, as long as the existing business stays the same, then we would issue a business license pursuant to our current code. It's a non-conforming use. It can stay until that point in time the business use itself is extinguished.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 697?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Simpson and seconded by Councilmember Moss to adopt ordinance 697. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance 697 is adopted. And we now turn to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Any new business? Then we turn to reports by the city manager, and I just want to say we got through the majority of tonight's agenda in an hour. So, Mr. Caulfield, the floor is yours for the next 5 minutes. Yeah.
Well, good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members. Before I get started on the 2019-20 proposed biennial budget, I would like to take an opportunity to recognize elements of our leadership team here who have been instrumental in developing and putting together this budget. We have, of course, Todd Kraus, our Assistant City Manager, Chief Financial Officer, and Administrative Services Director. Also, Dave Buer, Mike Zaro, Heidi Walkner, Susan Adams, Paul Busich, Mary Dodsworth, and Shannon Kelly Fong. They all played just an absolutely outstanding job in pulling this together. Basically, this will this is a blueprint that will ensure continued top-notch municipal services. Also, it's a commitment to implement your vision and your goals that you have identified for this community. And also, just a real special note of thanks to Ms. Kraus for what she's done, and I think you have the product of all the work that has gone together in that document. To say it is a transparent and in the spirit of full disclosure is probably a bit of an understatement. But again, that goes to Ms. Kraus and her attention to detail and how she approaches the development and the presentation of a budget document. So we are very, very fortunate to have her and her expertise here at the City of Lakewood. Also want to express appreciation to all of our employees, for their commitment, for their innovation and their creativity and their professionalism that they bring as city employees and as public servants day in and day out to provide the municipal services that our community has, quite frankly, come to expect and demand, and they do an absolutely fantastic job. The result of this before you is a budget proposal that provides for financial stability in the coming biennium and targets prudent investment opportunities, and it preserves our excellent credit rating, and it continues, again, our commitment to our community partners in helping us fulfill our overall mission. So with that, I am pleased to present the city's proposed biennial budget for 19 and 20. It totals $87.2 million in 2019 and $91.9 million in 2020. It's a balanced budget, provides the highest level of services to the Lakewood community. Every 2 years, this is something that we undertake. It represents a series of opportunities, challenges, and difficult decisions that we need to, take a look at. This budget emphasizes, our core services of health, safety, and welfare obligations based on legal mandates. It ensures financial stability, integrity. It also focuses, again, on the implementation of your council goals to achieve your vision with a specific focus and additional resources in support of economic development, infrastructure, and, of course, public safety. Currently, the Puget Sound enjoys a really strong economy and basically continues to outperform the national economy. However, if you peel back the onion on that, it's only really occurring in a certain area of the Puget Sound region. And despite that, Lakewood, we're not really seeing that robust growth in, for example, our general fund revenues. And that's no different than any other city. And so the difficult economic conditions that we've been faced with the last 10 years going back to the Great Recession really are continuing today. We're not seeing this large significant growth of revenue in our general fund. Thus, our focus on managing our costs and our operating expenditures, and that's where our focus has been. We do know that this is going to continue into the future, and one of the challenges that we have is how do we deal with this? This is something that we have known for a number of years now. One of the things that I will be asking our executive leadership team to begin doing later this month is, what do we look like as an organization, and how are we going to deliver services on our 25th anniversary, which will be January 1st or there's about of 2021. And really what we need to do is take our organizational structure and how we're doing business and set that aside and start off with, here's the revenue that we have. If we were to start up today as a brand new city, how would we do it? And the reason we need to do that is because the margin between our operating revenues and our operating expenditures as we look out into the future is just, it's significant. And it's not going to be solved by just nibbling around the edges. So we're going to have to get a little bit more creative and to address that. And so that's something, rather than waiting until 2 years from now, that is something that we are going to start later this month, even though the current 2-year budget as we approach 19 and 20 is not even yet in place. But again, the good news is that the current budget proposal is balanced and will allow us to move forward. Also, this budget does build upon the policies that this council has put in place, particularly our financial policies, having a 6-year financial forecast, which allows us to see how we're doing and where we're headed. It also has a 6-year capital improvement program, actually for a city of our size and scope, quite aggressive. And it includes the necessary reserves to ensure that if we do have a downturn here or there, we're able to adapt and deal with that. I think, as you all are aware, we're an optional code city. We have a population approaching 60,000 people. We're the second largest city in Pierce County. We're the 18th largest city in the state of Washington. So at the end of the day, what does that translate into? We're a leader, and we're a big player, not just in Pierce County, but all of Washington State. Also, I'd like to point out that Lakewood is one of the most diverse communities in all of Washington State. Very, very beautiful community. We're strategically located, between, the ports of Seattle, of course, Port of Tacoma, Port of Olympia, of course, our proximity of being host community to JBLM, as well as Camp Murray. Since incorporation, we have preserved our existing single-family residential neighborhoods, while at the same time building upon the commercial opportunities that exist. And this evening's action with the sub-area plan is a key indication of that as we look out into the future. Since incorporation, crime is down significantly. Significant infrastructure improvements have been made across the board. And quite frankly, we provide a number of services and amenities that never even existed before the city incorporated. And one example I would like to use is just think about all the special events that the city either puts on directly or partners with a number of folks. And the thousands, the tens of thousands of people that now can stay here in Lakewood, enjoy those great activities. And of course, Summerfest is just one example of that, but there's a number of them, and you'll be hearing more about that as part of the department presentations. In 2017, there was almost 27,000 housing units here in Lakewood, about a 50-50 split between those that are single family and those that are multifamily / mobile home parks. Also, Lakewood is home to almost 6,000 active businesses, many that reside here in Lakewood. We have 3 retail trade areas here in our community. We're also home to the Lakewood Industrial Park, which is the 4th largest private employer in all of Pierce County, and we have that right here in town. Also, we have coming out of the ground, the Lakewood Business Park, which is going to be a fantastic attribute to our community once that is built out. The total employment in Lakewood, to say it has recovered from the downturn of the economy in 2008, is probably a bit of an understatement. You can see on the stats there, we're approaching 35,000 people who work in Lakewood, an increase of almost 15% in the last, 4 or 5 years, and it continues to grow. Also, the types of jobs that are coming into Lakewood, it's not those traditional low-paying retail jobs. It's actually higher-paying healthcare jobs, professional services, service industries, things along those lines. Again, a great testament to what this council has put in place to be able to attract that. As I mentioned, we're also a host community to both JBLM and Camp Murray. We take great pride with the relationship with our military. We have deep ties going back to when it was first Camp Murray, over 100 years ago, and we celebrated that last year. It's the largest single-site employer in Washington State, behind a little company called the Boeing Company, and we have it right here in our backyard. The base is made up of 40,000 service members, plus another 15,000 federal civilian employees. And then on top of that, there's another 45,000 military dependents, spouses and other dependents associated with the service members. And then there's another 32,000 retirees that rely on JBLM for a number of services. So bringing the impact of 130,000 people that come in and around the Lakewood area as it relates to our military. On our side of the wire, the city of Lakewood has and continues to take a strong leadership role as it relates to JBLM and Camp Murray. And a key component of that is the formation and the continuation of the South Sound Military and Communities Partnership, or SSMCP. This is an organization that the city helps stand up and continues to help lead. It focuses on all issues on our side of the wire as it relates to whether it's transportation, education, social services, healthcare, and the list goes on and on. That organization is made up and comprised of a number of organizations, including the 17 cities and counties that actually touch JBLM. We are recognized as a leader in that area. SSMCP is held as a national example of how to do it right with your military bases and the military relations. And in 2016, we were recognized by the Association of Defense Communities as a great American defense community. From an economic standpoint, and actually just like to say, first and foremost, JBLM is there to provide security to the United States of America. On top of that, many of their missions are also humanitarian and disaster aid oriented. And so they play a very, very key element as it relates to who and what the United States is. From an economic standpoint, our SSMCP recently commissioned a study working in partnership with the University of Washington, Tacoma, and come to find out that the economic benefit of SSMCP is over $9 billion. $9 billion. Original estimates going back, as recently as several years ago, placed that at about $3 billion. And even the $9 billion is probably a bit of a conservative estimate. So needless to say, they're not only an economic driver here in Pierce County, but are also an economic driver in all of Washington State, representing probably 3 or 4% of the state's GDP. And again, right here in our backyard. As we look at Lakewood's economic potential, it continues to grow. The deputy mayor mentioned earlier this evening an article that came out with the EDB, and more to follow on things like that. Since the city's incorporated, economic development, job creation, and access to quality housing have been key initiatives of not just this council, but past councils. The result of this is a business-friendly environment and climate that fosters redevelopment and investment here in Lakewood. And some examples of that, the sub-area plan that we have just completed. Also, given the demand for industrial and light manufacturing business locations, we are now beginning to see development and investment occurring down in what we call the Woodbrook Business Park. Earlier this year, a 476,000 square foot logistics center opened up. 2 national companies have moved in there. The school district is in the process of surplusing their property. It's expected that that site is expected to result in upwards of 775,000 square feet of development. There's a couple other developments that are moving forward down there that are probably going to result in another 400,000 or 500,000 square feet. So as we look out 1, 2, or certainly 3 years, we're looking at another million plus square feet of that type of development coming into Lakewood. And with that, will bring, jobs. Another area is along the Pacific Highway South, an area that we call Lakewood Landing, because it looks over across the street, across I-5 to McCord Field. We're working with the state and looking for a win-win situation where we can move their maintenance facility someplace else in the city that will result in the opening up and making available for private investment 25 or 30 acres along I-5 for a number of activities. And this is more of a marathon. However, in the very near future, we're going to be bringing back to you an agreement that we have been able to broker with the state to begin to move that forward. We have also got the buy-in and the support of our state delegation in getting their assistance at some time in the future when we'll need that. But given its proximity to I-5 and, of course, State Route 512, really what we're trying to do is not just provide something for our citizens for a place to go shop and dine and things like that, but also for those 330,000 people that are driving by I-5 on a day-by-day basis. What a tremendous opportunity. Another is earlier this year, the city was pleased to announce that there is an opportunity zone here in Lakewood in a number of our neighborhoods. It's a program that's sponsored by the federal government, provides a number of tax incentives and tax cuts of some sort to private investment, again, in a number of neighborhoods, particularly Lakeview and Springbrook and Tillicum and even Woodbrook. So again, a very positive reflection on Lakewood. We continue to be served by both Pierce Transit and Sound Transit. The Sound Transit Sounder Station is very, very successful. Coming, hopefully, in sometime in the future will be another sounder station down in the Tillicum neighborhood, so that's in the planning. We're also working with our federal delegation to try and get a study so that we can have an Amtrak station here in Lakewood to pick up not just folks in Lakewood, but the South Sound, including the folks on JBLM. Of course, a project that has just gotten underway that the city played a tremendous leadership role in is the reconstruction of the I-5 JBLM corridor, that 7-mile stretch of roadway between North Thorn Lane all the way down to Mounts Road. This is, this highway has not been touched other than an overlay about 30 years ago. But in terms of being able to handle the capacity of the growth that's occurred in the South Sound region in the last 30, 40, 50 years, it's no longer sufficient to be able to do that. When that roadway was first opened, Thurston and Pierce County population totaled something like 300,000 or 400,000 people. Today it's approaching 1.2, 1.3 million. So when people say that that congestion is caused by JBLM, that is not true. It's actually caused by the growth that's occurred in this area. So thankfully, with our support and our leadership, WashDOT is now making the improvements. However, it does help JBLM because it helps them with transportation initiatives from a military readiness standpoint, whether they need to get to the port or whether they need to go out to their training area in Yakima. We also continue to work with the Pierce County Library System to bring a new library to our downtown as well as out to the Tillicum neighborhood. The plan right now is that there would be a capital bond that would be presented to the Lakewood voters for their consideration in November of 2019 for that. We're also moving forward on the previously known Motor Ave project, now known as the Colonial Center Plaza, which will just be a grand area where folks can get together and we can have festivals and just a number of great events, and also serve as a catalyst and an impetus for redevelopment in that part of the city. And so for the city to step up and provide a couple of $1 million to be able to do that, again, is a positive testament to this council. Another key program that the city has recently initiated, which we thought we would begin seeing some positive feedback maybe as we looked out 2 or 3 years is our rental housing safety program. That program is going exceptionally well. The purpose of the program is to ensure that, our rental housing stock is being properly maintained and that our residents, live in a safe and healthy environment. We come to find out that's not always the case. The good news is that we're getting at those issues sooner rather than later before they move over into the abatement pile, and then those apartments have to be torn down or whatever they are, those residential units. And then what happens? Basically gentrification. So somebody else comes in and buys it and rebuilds, and then of course, rents go up 2, 3, 4 times. That's all well and good from a business standpoint, but what about our residents? Where are they gonna go? They can't afford those new rents. So this rental housing safety program at the end of the day is about protecting and preserving our existing housing, and again, ensuring that those folks that are living in that housing have a very safe and secure place to live. So again, a lot of positive things happening here in the city. At the same time, we can't do it all by ourselves. And we are so blessed that the level of volunteerism and civic pride and partnerships that we have here in Lakewood is second to none across the board, whether it's residents, businesses, organizations, our neighbors, private sector, nonprofit sector, and the list goes on and on. The makeup of the city, you can see there, we're governed by the mayor and the council, who hired myself as the city manager to be the CEO. We have 8 departments, and you can see them listed there. And those department directors will be making their budget presentations in a little bit more detail this coming Wednesday and the following Wednesday. We are not a full-service city. We're actually last to the table, if you will, incorporated in 1996. For example, water services. City is not a water purveyor. That is provided by the Lakewood Water District. Likewise, we do not operate a sewer utility. That is provided by Pierce County. Garbage is provided by Waste Connection. West Pierce Fire and Rescue provides fire and EMS services. Electricity is a little interesting here in Lakewood, very, very unique in that we have service provided by the 3 types of electrical companies that do exist in Washington State. A cooperative, Lakeview Light and Power, a public entity, Tacoma Power, and a private entity, Puget Sound Energy. And it's about 1/3 across the board as well, which is very, very unique. And then Puget Sound Energy is also the purveyor of natural gas services. And of course, the list goes on. But again, the point is that the city relies on its partnerships and its relationships with its other governmental agencies to move our community forward. The City Council goals and vision, back in 2015, this body initiated a process, community-wide process that resulted in that vision statement. Probably one of the most comprehensive community outreach processes that the city has ever done, though probably the sub-area plan probably comes in a close second, if not maybe even on equal footing. But again, at the end of the day, the result of that is to determine where's this community heading as we look out 30 years after incorporation. Subsequent to that, the City Council has revised its goals for 2019 and 20. And you can see them listed there. Again, economic development, dependable infrastructure, public safety, fiscal responsibility, and transparency. And again, the purpose of these goals are to guide the resources that we have and how they're allocated so that we can essentially complete our mission and achieve those goals. So these serve as the foundation for the 2019-2020 budget. When you go through the document, most of our time is going to be spent on the operating budget. That's the part of the budget that typically gets the greatest attention. And so we've tried to break it down and present it in different components. The overall document itself is tabbed out by those major components there, budget message, introduction, et cetera. But when you get into the operating budget, each of the departments and then down to the division level is broken down into everything from the 10,000-foot level of organizational chart all the way down to the detailed revenues and expenditures, and then in the appendix, the line item detail. So again, you can see the breakdown of the budget. It's broken down between general government, capital, and utility, as well as internal service funds. So I'm sorry, four. It's broken down into four components. Again, just want to emphasize that the budget itself is compliant with your adopted financial policies. It's balanced. It does not result in any shape, form, or manner or reduction in any services. Matter of fact, it enhanced services in a number of areas. It does not use one-time monies for ongoing purposes. That gets organizations in trouble. It gets us at home, that gets us in trouble. So our operating expenditures do not exceed our operating revenues. And then, of course, it maintains our reserves. The general fund itself, actually our general and street fund, basically we are a $40 million business. And you can see most of our revenue, our operating revenue, comes in the form of sales tax, followed by property tax, utility taxes. Other taxes are, for example, gambling and admissions taxes, franchise fees, and then you can see a number of other revenue sources there. Really no major change over the last several years or as we look out into the future. In sales tax, want to point out that the reason that you see a decrease from 18 to 19, again, it comes back to our financial forecast and our financial policy, is that a lot of the sales tax growth in 2018 is construction. There's a lot of new construction going on. That's not something that we can count on year in and year out. And so we have proposed a baseline sales tax budget because if we go above that, again, that gets us in trouble. Also, something that's not included in 19 and 20, and you've probably heard about this, is the Marketplace Fairness Act. Basically, cities in Washington State being able to receive sales tax or use tax from internet services. And I know Association of Washington Cities has done an analysis and made some projections for all cities in the state. Really, the money isn't expected to start coming in until maybe the latter part of 19 or 20 and 21. That is not included in there. And the reason being is because our financial policies say we will not account for that revenue until it is recognized, because we have no idea what it's going to be. Again, and AWC has been very clear that their estimates are purely speculative, so we need to be cognitive of that. But again, that conservative financial forecasting is what has resulted in us having, sound financial footing and resulted in kind of this one-time money that we've been able to accumulate at the end of each year that's been reinvested into some other areas. On the other end of the coin is our operating budget, and you can see it's a little under the respective operating revenue dollar amounts. And this is the crux of our operating services, the day-to-day activities that we provide, whether it's community and economic development, or whether it's public safety, and which includes jail and CSRT and dispatch services, legal and parks and recreation, and all of those wonderful programs. This slide here illustrates the trends of our operating revenue and operating expenditures in the general fund. And you can see on average, between 2009 and 2018, our operating revenues and operating expenditures, lined up a little over 2% per year. But then looking out into 19 and 20, you can see it's kind of slowing down a little bit. And then as we, look out into the future, that's expected to continue. For comparative purposes, the state's general fund is growing at double digits on both sides of the equation, by the way, just for comparison purposes. And again, here's a graphic illustration showing that. And again, the focus here is to be very mindful of our operating expenditures. And so again, that's where we spend most of our time as we manage our resources. Reserves, it's important to have reserves. This was something that the City Council established back in 2014. We continue to maintain our reserves. You can see it's 12% of our operating revenues, and you can see it at the top there. We have a contingency reserve, just a regular general fund reserve to help with cash flow, and then a strategic reserve of another 5% that is available for catastrophic type activities, for example, when the big earthquake hits. And again, this is a graphic illustration showing that. You can see that green line right about $5 million. You know, that's the baseline. You know, we don't want to go below that. That's the baseline reserves that we have. Anything above that is one-time monies. And you can see in 15, 16, and 17, and a little bit in 18, it's above that. That's a result of the financial policies working. Since we do have conservative financial policies, that results in one-time money. And you can see it fluctuates up and it fluctuates down. And then the reason that you don't see that in 2019 and 20, because those one-time monies are now being invested into primarily road and street projects. And a good example of that is the entry roadway into Wahop. We used 2017 one-time monies to build that in 2018. This is the ending fund balances, which includes reserves of all of our funds, broken down by down at the bottom. You can see our general fund reserves, again, 12% of our operating revenue. Then we have one time. We also have special revenue funds that account for special activities as mandated by state law, whether it's real estate excise tax or LTAC funds or things like that. Then we have debt service, and then of course our capital funds, surface water management, and then our internal service funds. And I'll talk a little bit about our internal service funds, but most of that relates to fleet and equipment. So some key highlights of the budget in terms of what's incorporated in here that supports your goals and your objectives. Again, leadership. This council has taken great pride in being a leader, not just locally, but countywide, regionally, state, and even nationally, going back to Washington, D.C., and also representing JBLM at the Pentagon as well. And so that continues as a part of this budget. Developing an online community dashboard, an imaging campaign for the city in support of economic development. We're in the process of launching a new web platform. The continuation of our proactive legislative agenda, which has resulted in not just really good policy changes across all levels of government, but also the city being the recipient of a good amount of funding, a lot from the state. We also want to continue to partner with the Pierce County Library folks to bring 2 new libraries to Lakewood. The transparent financial reporting, and we are recognized as a leader in that area here in Washington State, and we want that to continue. The implementation of our document management and paperless system, 2 departments have already moved in that direction, the court department and our legal department. So citywide, we're going to move forward in that as we look out into 19 and 20. The formation of a city equity team. You know, as part of the vision is to celebrate our diversity. Internal to the city of Lakewood, it's important that we make a concerted effort so that we have a fair representation of the people that we serve. And I will tell you that we do have some work to do there. We have made some significant strides over the last couple of years, particularly in the areas of leadership as it relates to women. But at the same time, if you look at city employees and you go down to the Boys and Girls Club, it's not the same. And I'm not saying that it's a mandate or anything along those lines, but I think as an organization, we need to take a step back and we need to reach out to the whole community of Lakewood to get them more involved in local government. And actually, your youth council was here this evening. That's a prime example. And so leadership here at the city, our executive leadership team, have decided to move forward with forming an equity team. And again, the goal here is to promote diversity and attract folks to come work into local government who not just live here, but represent us. Of course, economic development, a key component, and I know I mentioned a bunch of areas of the city, and that is going to continue. Economic development is one of the driving factors of who and what we are. Also, additional resources in terms of half an FTE are being added to that. We have a planning manager, actually she was here earlier, Tiffany Spear, And so half of her time, beginning in 2019, will be allocated in support of economic development to help out our current economic development manager, Becky Newton, who then actually has access to all city resources in support of economic development. So as I like to say, when it comes to economic development, we all work for Becky. Along those lines, that same position wants to take we want to really one-up our game as it relates to regional participation and involvement in both PCRC and PSRC. And a lot of cities are not at the table on that, and you've probably heard me make comments about those organizations in the past, but at the same time, we need to be at the table, and we've started to do that, and the 1920 budget allows us to, again, take a more proactive role there. We've got some major code updates, Title 18A, and my favorite, the Shoreline Management Plan, which is a edict from the state. Looking at evaluating options for an online permit system, including perhaps partnering with the county. Continue the implementation of the rental housing safety program. I would just like to caution the council, even though that's up and running, we are still spending a lot of time with that program as it continues to evolve and move forward. Proactive abatement, including doubling the number of staff from 1 to 2 in support of that program. Also, as we look out into the future, building inspectors and building officials are far few and in between, and so our building official is proposing some type of an apprentice program, perhaps either with Pierce College or Bates Community College, to provide an avenue for folks who want to get involved in that field, a way to do that. Of course, SSMCP, we want to continue with that. Some of the major initiatives on SSMCP is resolving the encroachment issue on the North Clear Zone, as well as the continued transportation issues along I-5. Last year, we did a check-in on the Lakewood Legacy Plan. Well, guess what? That was adopted 5 years ago, 2014. 5 years are up, pursuant to state law, but also because it's the right thing to do. We are proposing funding to update the Lakewood Legacy Plan. Also, we are having conversations with the Clover Park School District about a cooperative use agreement as it relates to facilities. Really what that results in is just memorializing and ensuring the certainty that currently exists on how we're currently operating. Also, the continuation of providing general fund dollars in support of those folks who desperately need help here in Lakewood. And the city of Lakewood, we are one of the few cities in Washington State that actually does this. Most cities don't do this. Certainly the larger cities, Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane, Bellingham, Vancouver, they do it. But certainly our neighbors around us, this is not something that happens. And so we are still committed to being a player there. While we are not the experts in many of those areas, what we can do best is help bring folks together and provide financing and tools to help. Looking to develop a couple of youth programs, one an after-school program, as well as a youth summit, and you heard the Youth Council talking about that this evening. We have International Cyclocross coming to Fort Steilacoom Park in December of 2019. That is a big deal. Additional resources in support of the street landscaping program. We are a victim of our own success. We have installed gateways, we have built new roadways, we have built sidewalks, and the list goes on. Well, guess what? They have to be maintained. And so this budget does include additional resources to maintain them. Also, similar to the legacy plan, there's money in here to update the non-motorized transportation plan that was first developed back in 2009, which is, quite frankly, a fantastic document. And the good news is there's probably going to be a lot of projects that are going to come off of that. But at the same time, we want to do a reset, and so our proposal is to do that in 2020. Also, an expansion of the Veterans Court. The judge has been able to secure, we just heard last week, a significant size grant to be able to move that program to a completely different level. Also, we want to continue the implementation of in-car video systems in all of our patrol vehicles. We did a little test run with Bike Patrol this past summer. It's been very positively received, and so we want to continue that, kind of, again, take it up a notch in 2019 and 20. Also looking at creating a community academy for folks in the community to get a real firsthand look about how our police department operates and what it is to be a police officer, and kind of expose them to, how our police department functions. We had a pretty good run with this predictive policing program, but at the end of the day, it really is not meeting our needs, and so we want to look at some different alternatives as we look out into 2019 and 20. Of course, our continued partnership with West Pierce Fire and Rescue, particularly as it relates to emergency management. And then one of our operating budget balancing strategies is to, for just 1 year, and we looked at all of our equipment, defer the collection of fleet and equipment reserves by 1 year and extending the life of all of that equipment subsequent to another year. The fact is that the equipment that we have we have a lot of new stuff, so pushing it out in another year we don't think is a major issue. So those are some of the key ones on the operating budget. So now switching to capital, and I'll start off with parks and transportation. So, this is an area that we've made some tremendous improvements. For 19 and 20, you can see the projects there for parks, totaling $5.5 million, though a lot of that is dependent on state grants that it looks like we're going to get, as well as some state capital budget requests that we may or may not get. But again, this is a very, very positive reflection of Ms. Dodsworth and her team in terms of what they're driving forward. Also, from a funding standpoint, the general fund is kicking in $80,000 a year in support of this program from our general fund. Likewise, on the transportation side, kind of a policy direction that the council provided a number of years ago was $500,000 coming from the general fund. So the general fund is providing financing and support of these programs. Here's a map just illustrating the location of the projects that have been completed in the last 4 years, 5 years, coupled with the projects for 19 and 20 that you saw on the previous page. 4 new projects down at Fort Steilacoom Park. Harry Todd Park Phase 2, of course, we'll be doing Phase 1 next year. Continued work down at Springbrook Park, American Lake Park, the continued partnership with University Place in Pierce County in support of Chambers Creek. And then, beginning in 2020, the implementation of the Ward Lake plan that was adopted by this body way back in 2010. So we figured it's about time we kind of get off the duff on that. And so we're going to, this budget includes funding to do that. This budget also continues funding and support of gateways, and the 2 new ones would be at Steilacoom Boulevard and Far West, as well as 84th and Tacoma Mall Boulevard. Also provides funding in terms of major maintenance like playground equipment replacement and upgrades, as well as the resurfacing that we need to do from a risk management standpoint. On the transportation side, I do want to say it's pretty phenomenal for a city of our size and scope. Between 2015 and 2020, we've completed about 50 transportation projects with a total value of over $54 million. Again, for a city of our size and scope, that is absolutely phenomenal. And that's street lighting, chip seal, pavement preservation, sidewalks, street reconstruction, traffic calming across the board. As we look out into 2019 and 20, that will continue. 13 transportation projects fully funded, totaling over $20 million. Actually, I'm just going to jump ahead. Streetlights. So this map here illustrates, and you can see the areas in color. Those are the areas that currently do not have streetlights. 2 meetings ago, this body approved a contract to put upwards of 470 plus streetlights in the areas that are denoted in purple there. And you can see most of it on the west side of Lake Steilacoom, and then a portion over by SR 512 and Pacific Highway. And then we have a plan and a strategy to basically get all of Lakewood with streetlights by 2022 or 2023. We're not saying that there's not going to be a gap here or there, but this plan, fully funded, gets streetlights in every single neighborhood, including the Oak Brook neighborhood. And the reason the Oak Brook neighborhood is out in the far years is we need to work with TPU to make sure that the transformers are sufficient enough to be able to carry the load. But at the end of the day, a financial strategy and a plan exists to get streetlights in every single city street in every single neighborhood. Likewise, our chip seal program has proven to be tremendously successful. And in advance of that, we do pavement patching and other types of improvements. And you can see we started in Oak Brook in 2015, 16, and 17. We have subsequently moved to Lake City in 18, and that will continue in 19 and 20. And then we will move over to the east side of the city before coming back over around the Lake Louise neighborhood in 2024. This investment probably provides one of our biggest bangs for our buck as it relates to pavement preservation. We also have a couple of overlay projects, including Custer, that we're proposing to do in 2018 from 88th to John Dower. That is a stretch of roadway that desperately needs to be done. However, I want to talk about 5 major projects that we are recommending to kick off in 19 and that will take through 2021, 2023. These are 5 projects totaling $25 million. The project funding, 30% would come from existing city revenues, mostly stormwater fees, and some grants that we have already secured. And then it would be, the balance of that would be funded with a $17.6 million councilmatic bond that would be issued in a series of funding beginning in 2019, 20, and 21, because we're not going to do all these projects all at once, though we want to kick off 3 of them sooner rather than later. The 4 projects you can see there, Gravely Lake Drive, Washington Boulevard to Nyanza. That will be the last segment of Gravely Lake Drive, which is, to some people, the first segment of Gravely Lake Drive when you come in off the Gravely Lake Drive exit. It will basically mirror what has been built on Gravely Lake Drive between Nyanza and Washington Boulevard, which is just about completed. This would be funded 100% with city monies, mostly the bonds, coupled with some stormwater funds. The next project, Washington Boulevard, interlocking to Gravely Lake Drive and the roundabouts. You remember last fall, we talked with the council about the corridor of Washington Boulevard up to Gravely Lake Drive, all the way down as it meanders through Edgewood and Northgate Road to JBLM. It's about a $13-14 million project. The purpose of this funding is twofold, and the reason you see it out in the latter years is because this will provide the city's match of 30% to hopefully, knock on wood, future funding that we can receive through the federal government, through the Defense Community Investment Program that Congress just created this year. And we anticipate it will take a couple of years to secure that funding. Meanwhile, we can move forward on the design of the project, and we will have the matching monies of 30% to be able to do that potentially as one major project, or at least a significant portion of it. The next project, Steilacoom Boulevard from 88th, or Weller to Custer, including going across the bridge. Right now, we have 2 grants that we have secured in support of that project. Our recommendation is to do it as one project. One of the grants is a small Safe Routes to School grant, and then the other is an overlay. Our recommendation is that we do full street improvements through that whole corridor, including putting in sidewalks where there are no sidewalks on both sides. And rather than doing the project in 2 or 3 phases, which would mean that the road would have to be shut down 2 or 3 times, how well do you think that's going to go over? Our recommendation is we do it as one major project. We do the design next year. We do right-of-way acquisition in 2020, and we construct in 2021. Again, the good news here is that we do have significant city and grant proceeds to be able to bring to the table. So the bond monies provide the balance of funds in support of that. Another project, the fourth project for which we do have a state capital budget totaling $2 million is Veterans Drive from Gravelly Lake Drive to American Lake Park. We have strong ties to the military. I think Veterans Drive should be rebuilt and reconstructed. And it is a roadway that desperately needs some improvements. The fifth project, we've been working with the community now for last couple of years, is Onyx Drive from 97th all the way out to Phillips. There's some areas that are already done in there. We presented to you some conceptual plans earlier this year based on the community participation and community outreach. So our recommendation is to design it in 2019 and build it in 2020. That would include a bike pedestrian path on one side of the roadway, curbs and gutters on the other, full street reconstruction, and streetlights. Again, these 5 major projects would be funded with bond proceeds totaling $17.6 million, financed with real estate excise tax over a 20-year period. Right now, our debt, we have very, very low debt, 1.1%. And by taking on this new councilmatic debt, our debt as a percentage of our general fund revenue in 2021 will rise to 4.3%. Well, what does that mean? For a city of our size and scope, really the threshold for debt, 10 to 12%. So we're still way below that. And so we do have the fiscal capacity to be able to accommodate that. I would also like to point out that S&P does think very highly, Standard & Poor's, of the city. You recall earlier this year, S&P raised our bond rating from a AA- to a AA. Matter of fact, since 2014, S&P has upgraded our rating 3 steps on 2 separate occasions. So they've essentially skipped a step in there. They've just moved us up. So again, positive reflection on the city. In their last upgrade, which again was in June of this year, they specifically noted the city's strong management, strong budgetary performance, very strong budgetary flexibility, very strong liquidity, and very strong debt and contingent liability profile. And even with issuing this debt, I am confident that that will continue. In the past, we have put projects in the transportation budget and allocated city monies as matching to grants that we had not yet received. The transportation budget as presented for 19 and 20, actually for the next 6 years, as presented in your budget, is fully funded. It's fully funded. However, we currently have 7 grants that are outstanding, and you can see them listed there. We have 3 TIB grants that we submitted. Knock on wood, we're hopeful that we'll receive funding for 1 of the 3. Highly unlikely we'll receive funding for 2 or certainly all 3. But if we can receive funding for 1, that will be fantastic. We'll know by the latter part of November on that. And then you can see we've also applied for some bike pedestrian and safe routes to school funding through different agencies. And we will know the outcome of that in January. If and when we receive funding for these projects, that will be handled through a budget amendment, either through the carry forward adjustment in 2019 or part of the mid-biennial budget review this time next year. I would also like to point out, in light of the City Council's action this evening on the sub-area plan, there's a project in there from the sub-area plan, and that is the needed new traffic signal at Gravelly Lake Drive and Avondale. Avondale. The sewer capital, we're moving forward with a couple of major projects. Basically, the way this works is we design in the even year. So right now, we're designing North Thorn Lane, the sewer extension for that project, and then we'll build in 19. And then we will do the same for Maple Street in 2020, and then build it in 2021. However, this budget also includes funding in support of extending sewers into Fort Steilacoom Park. Right now, we're in the design phase of that and water, and we expect to break ground on that in 2019. And here's a map illustrating those projects. And in your budget are the specifics of what the impacts of those in terms of property served and potential connections and things along those lines. Likewise, in the stormwater area, you can see most of the stormwater money down at the bottom there is allocated in support of park and transportation improvement projects. However, there are a handful of smaller storm-oriented projects that focus on our NPDES requirements, a number of outfall retrofits, as well as a bioswale and just some other smaller projects. And here's a map illustrating where those are located. Our internal service funds, I mentioned earlier, the purpose of the internal service funds is to account for all costs associated with operating our city vehicles, our equipment, our facilities, information systems, and risk management. And then those costs are then charged back to the departments. Basically, it's about $11 million a year. And so when we look at fleet, we also have a capital component to that. And you can see in 2019, we have a number, in 2020, we have a number of vehicles that need to be replaced. And likewise, a number of new equipment that we are recommending to be purchased, including a drop-in sander for a dump truck in support of snow and ice response, a salt bin cover over at the shop because having the salt sit out in the open is not very effective. And then some other equipment to help with stormwater maintenance, like an articulate mower, as well as our parks program as well. And then a 1,000-gallon tank to store de-icer. Right now, we fill up our tanks, and then we got to go back and forth. So having a place that we can store that will improve efficiency and effectiveness there. Property management. This is compliant with our property management plan that was presented to the council earlier this year. Just like to point out the big item here is those gosh dang exterior beams that we got to paint like every 5 to 7 years. So that's the major component of this budget here. Though as we look out into the future, you'll see boiler repair and replacement, and so we are beginning to take action on that. But as we look out in 3, 4, 5 years, the boilers here at City Hall are going to have to be replaced, and the funding and a plan is in place to be able to do that. Information technology. This here, I think again earlier this year, we provided you an update with our information technology plan, and again, this is compliant with that. You might not see a lot of items there for 2019 and 20. However, I do want to point out that the document management system is a huge lift. It's kind of like the rental housing safety program, all hands on deck to do that. And so we anticipate that we've kicked that off in 2018, and we expect that's going to take probably a good 12, probably 24 months to get up and running, if not longer. We're a little bit behind the power curve as an organization on that. But again, you can see we want to continue with maybe not being on the cutting edge of information technology, but at least keeping up with things. And certainly this budget does that and allows us to do that and provide some flexibility as well. When we talk about employees, one of our key drivers in our general fund is our employee costs. 75% of our general fund budget is employees. People are expensive. At the same time, we have really, really good people here. They do a fantastic job. But looking back in 2014, we had to make some changes. Up until 2014, we averaged 245 FTEs between 8 and 14. But given the impact of the economy and things along those lines, we needed to right size. The result of that is that we came down to, you can see the numbers there, about 220 FTEs. However, as we look out into 19 and 20, the recommendation is to go down to 216 and 214, and here's why. So in 2019, we are proposing adding a position in support of abatement. However, there's 4.5 other positions that are not needed. 2 in our legal department. A lot of that has to do with just the people who are occupying other positions, as well as going paperless. That has had an impact. Same thing in the municipal court department, going paperless. So going from 6 clerks to 5 clerks is certainly sufficient. And then in public works engineering, we do have an existing limited term position that expires at the end of this year. And then we currently have a vacant engineering technician position that, as we look out into the future, is currently not needed. Likewise, as we look out into 20, we have 2 other limited term positions that we're anticipating are not going to be needed. However, if they are, as we've done in the past, then we will evaluate at that point in time. But basically, the number of FTEs that we are proposing are more than sufficient to be able to meet your objectives and to achieve City Council's goals. So in conclusion, the budget's balanced, does not reduce services, actually increases services in a number of areas, provides a commitment to quality services and amenities that our residents have come to expect and demand, and reestablishes our organization's short and long-term financial viability as we look out into the future. And this is, again, the introduction this evening. And as we look out the next couple of weeks, department presentations will begin on Wednesday, followed by the continuation of department presentations the following Wednesday, October 22nd, another study session, followed by public hearings on November 5th. Also, as part of the budget, coming forward will be human services funding, lodging tax recommendations, things along those lines. One of the items that we are recommending is a change to our code as it relates to sewers. A couple of operational items there, including consolidating 2 of the utility funds. We don't need to have 2 standalone sewer capital funds. It needs to be consolidated into one. And then ultimately, if the council is so inclined and ready, taking action on all of those items at your November 19th regular council meeting. And then here's how to stay connected. So I didn't go my full 5 hours. So certainly if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer them, or if you wanted to hold until the department presentations, that would be fine as well.
Certainly, Councilmember Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just a comment, not this past Friday, but the Friday before. Our guest speaker for the Lakewood Rotary was from the Lakewood Industrial Center.
Tim, yeah.
And he, at the end of that meeting, he said he would only have 3,000 square feet of space available.
Yeah.
And so he's looking for, he said if he had someone requesting a larger area, he could not accommodate them. So that was good news.
That's right, and that's why the Woodbrook Business Park is deemed so important and so attractive these days. That's right. Yep.
The audience was really pleased to hear that.
Any other questions off the top of your head? Lots of great information for us to digest, and I'm sure we'll have thoughtful and probing questions as we go through the components of the budget. Let's just confirm the time. I think tomorrow, obviously, it's the meeting with the Nisqually Tribal Council. That's at 5 o'clock.
5 p.m.
And Wednesday's meeting back here is at 6, not 7.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Just so everybody has that. Okay. The meeting on Wednesday at 6, is that going to be more?
It'll be in the conference room, the American Lake room, like we did 2 years ago, and then 2 years prior to that.
Okay. We
So
don't plan on having some sandwiches there or something like that, since we're kind of cutting into the dinner time frame? I didn't see that in the budget document.
It's not in the budget,
The
Deputy
deputy mayor's snack allowance, but perhaps we might put something together.
Is that in the form of a motion, Deputy Mayor?
So moved.
We'll get you squared away. We'll get you squared away.
Didn't hear a second of city manager.
We'll get you squared away. We got some.
Right next to the reduction in the deputy mayor's salary.
Yeah.
You're right, exactly. So, yeah, have at it.
We got some MREs from 1986 in the back.
Hey, I'll take them. But since we are kind of cutting into the normal sort of race home and get something to eat time frame at 6, so.
Yeah,
you might wanna do
absolutely,
that.
yeah. We will do that for you.
And then I assume, what would you estimate the time frame for these budget meetings? 2 hours, 2.5?
Yeah, I would say so. So the departments, we are, actually, the purpose of the department's presentations is really just to put it out on the table. And so rather than rotating through a bunch of people, the department directors are going to present their whole department, very succinct, to the point, like me this evening. And
I'm glad
but
there's
really,
humor.
really the purpose is to present it to you so that you folks have an opportunity to not just ask questions, but also have discussions amongst yourselves.
One thing is I'm thinking we're going to get there, but on the transportation projects that were highlighted tonight, it might be a helpful reminder to go back and look at our 6-year tip from last year that we passed, just to see where those
It's in the
projects
budget.
were. It
It's
is in
in
the
there.
budget. And then the PCI ratings for those roads, just to kind of have on hand. It would be nice to see where we were and where we're going,
Yeah,
to
I
be
think
consistent.
we're finishing that up, so we should have those PCI ratings here in the near future.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Well, thank you very much. Well presented, and certainly it will be well received as we go through it. If there are no other reports, you have one other report?
So, adult family homes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're in the process of pulling some material together, and we're going to reach out, well, it'll be part of the town hall meeting, the meeting that we're going to have with whoever wants to attend, particularly from the Oak Brook neighborhood here, hopefully in the next few weeks, if not sooner. One of the things that our communications manager has suggested is putting together some fact-based FAQs on the whole process, just trying to simplify it so that folks, I mean, we all live and breathe this stuff, so we understand it a little bit more. And so we want to try and, simplify that so it's succinct and to the point, and so the community, when they look at it, they can see what the issues are, as well as a timeline of things. We're also putting together a list of proposed legislative solutions that our state representatives can sponsor. I would also like to point out that our state representatives have the resources in Olympia to do this. They have staff, not their own staff, but there is House staff, policy staff that is non-political, and then they have caucus staff as well. So this is not something that the city needs to do. It's something that our state legislators need to take on, but they have the resources to write that. Now, if for some reason they don't, the city attorney and I have some ideas on how we can help them. We have some folks that we might be able to bring in, but at the end of the day, our legislators have the resources and have access to resources to do that. I just want to kind of put that out there. So some of the areas that we're looking at are making it illegal. So basically asking our legislators, okay, what are you willing to sponsor and put on the table? Make it illegal to put predatory criminals into adult family home businesses. Removing the part of the law that allows these types of businesses to convert into enhanced service facilities. Make the process for court review of people who go into these businesses from prison open to the public and provide for an opportunity of local input. That would be helpful. Also something that I know Pierce County is beginning to work on, and Chief Zarro has been sitting in those meetings, is requiring these sexually violent predators, particularly those from McNeil Island, be released only to their county of origin, where they are coming from, as opposed into Lakewood. And then another item, and I'm just going to say the word density, but we need to find a better way of presenting that. But how can we stop all of these adult family homes coming into one neighborhood in terms of the proximity of just, not just Lakewood, but one neighborhood in particular? And I know that runs in fraught with legal challenges that relates to, the Federal Fair Housing Act and such. But there are some smart people in Olympia who, if they wanted to put their minds to these things, could be able to help us on that. So those are some of the ideas that, we've been working on as we think through this, and so we'll probably have more of a detailed report for you here in the next week or so. The other item that we're standing by on is whether or not to appeal the judge's ruling. I will tell you that I think we should appeal it. I don't know if I'm violating exec session stuff there, but I think it's the right thing to do. I know it'll cost us some money, but again, just wanted to put that out there, and I think we'll probably need some direction from the council on that here, and we do have some time on that. But again, I just want to let you know we're working to try and pull all of this together, and then again, look to have a meeting out at the Elks, I think that room, that facility.
Where is that?
It's right off of, it's on 75th and Bridgeport. I keep calling it the VFW, but it's the Elks Club.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got a big room. I think it'll be
And,
really
Starbucks
conducive to
there.
this type of a.
Okay. Is that a better location than the Oak Brook thing? I think, is it? For the Oak Brook community, it's easier to find? Do you think so? It's right, pretty close by? Okay. What do you think, Paul? So that's where it was? Okay, all right.
So.
So it would be good if we could span the concerns, not exclusively Oak Brook Center.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Some people, I mean, we have 91 homes, but there are other neighborhoods that have them.
Yep. So.
Go ahead.
Bryn, how many hits are we getting concerning the adult family homes citywide? Because following up on what Mike is saying, I'm wondering if maybe the McGavick Center or someplace on campus might be a better spot to hold this. I mean, if we're looking for numbers and we're looking for impact, it seems to me we want the most people at the largest destination. While I can see the Elks working, what might inform us is how many hits are we getting? What's the buzz out there?
I can look that up. I don't have a number off the top of my head, so I'll do some research to see just kind of what numbers we're getting as
Yeah.
far as website and then social media, and I'll get that back.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Are you done? One thing I may, Bryn, before you leave, I like the manager's thought about putting some FAQs together. What's that?
Was her idea.
Oh, well, you can take credit for it, like this whole document here. I just give you a hard time. I think questions like you heard in the audience tonight from Mr. Pedroza, the simple questions like, why can't we enforce private covenants against quote-unquote businesses? I mean, it's such a simple question we all know the answer to, but those are the basic fundamental things. If we can roundtable those and really hone that so it's a good document for those folks to hand out, that would be helpful. The timing, I was thinking we'd have the meeting before the 30-day appeal period runs. I don't know, based on your comment, whether that's necessary or not. We should talk about that, and if you want some consensus tonight's the night to talk about it either here or we can go into executive session if need be, Ms. Wachter. And then on the proposed legislative solutions, if I feigned a bit of shock up here during one of the public comments, hopefully I didn't look too shocked, because I'm surprised that one of our own legislators hasn't even thought through some legislative solutions and is yet looking once again to us to tell them what to do. I was frustrated at that, and I'll have to have a sidebar conversation with that particular legislator.
And actually, I was just going to interrupt. We're going to we would, once we have a plan, we would send this out via email as part of an invitation to our existing legislators as well as those who are running for office.
Exactly. I think we have to do that. And with regard to that, I might reach out to them and say, here are some of our tentative thoughts before we go to this community meeting with some proposed legislative solutions. We'd like to hear what you've been ruminating about, because you obviously know it's an issue, right? The other thing that I throw out there as a resource is MSRC. Wouldn't they have an opportunity to take a look at the issue for us, perhaps, at least with regard to what cities can and cannot do? We know clearly from the judge's ruling what we're told we're not allowed to do, but MSRC may have some assistance for us with regard to some of the issues that we're proposing. I don't know.
Mayor Pro Tem Whalen and members of the council, MRSC would typically refer a question of this nature to the council that we hired to represent us in the case.
Okay.
I can certainly look at the website to double check that. And with regard to an executive session tonight, I can understand that there are probably some things to discuss, but the attorney I just referenced will be on site at City Hall on Thursday. And he and I are going to talk about all dimensions of the case, not just the legal pieces of it, but also some of the pieces about crafting any potential solutions going forward. He's not optimistic about what we're looking like in the strictly court arena, but he is coming down Thursday, and following our meeting together, we will then be briefing the manager. The manager's not actually interested in the ideas we discard. He wants options and recommendations following that meeting.
So what I hear you tell me is that we should defer an executive session until next Monday, after you've had a chance to flesh some ideas out with the attorney and the manager.
Yes, in a nutshell. Without that, we're going to go through two meetings, and next week I may have a different set of options for you than I would have tonight.
And not to sound too legalistic or simplistic, but it might be helpful if some of those thoughts can be gelled into the FAQs that we're going to provide to folks and say, why can't we do X? Here's why. Or why did the court tell us we couldn't do X, Y, or Z? Here's why. And provide copies of the statutes, copies of, I don't know if we've ordered a transcript of the court's decision, oral
We
decision.
have.
That might be helpful to have too.
Mm-hmm. And that is the reason that, to the degree that she can tolerate it, Bryn Grimley has been very involved in all of our meetings and has spent a great deal of time translating the legalistic
Legalese.
to the palatable.
Wow, that is a yeoman's task. Mr. Brandstetter.
I follow that frequently, that ask question and say, why can't we do this, and here's why. But I think that and when we do that, I think some of those questions have not an exact answer. In other words, why can't we do this? And it's not just say, here's why, but DSHS says.
Or the state of Washington representing DSHS says, right?
That goes on, because I think some of those things about, I don't think we want to rule against ourselves on some things.
I think that helps
that
frame
there
the
is maybe
legislative
some
solution,
option to pursue, particularly if we are going to eventually decide that we're going to appeal. I don't know that we want to put something out there in public that essentially argues against points that we would make in an appeal. We try to get a different judge to see something differently.
It's about context. I agree with you, and we can certainly frame it as, this is what the court stated the law to be, however, those kinds of things. And then reference the statute that was referenced in the court's opinion. All good things. Anything else? Mr. Caulfield, is that the last of your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we'll turn to city council comments, and since we're on,
I guess that if the city manager could go over really what the expected outcomes of tomorrow evening's meeting is, or really, because I understood we were supposed to put some things on the table, and I read what it is, but I guess I'm trying to figure out, what do we want to come away from tomorrow other than just
networking,
feeling that we understand each other.
I think just essentially a meet and greet, and kind of play it by ear, and then see what kind of follow-up that they're interested in doing, and talk about future partnering. I think what we've heard from the Nisqually tribe staff is that the tribal council is not fully aware of a lot of the partnerships that they have with surrounding jurisdictions, or rather the depth of them, particularly with Lakewood.
Right.
And so it's really just, and so they're doing that right now. So it's just really an opportunity for some FaceTime.
Do we have a cover sheet, Mr. Caulfield, that shows the Nisqually tribe's investment in Lakewood, you know, the gas station? We could talk about
It's in your
that.
packet.
Oh,
It's-
it is in the
it's
packet,
your-
okay.
That's correct. Mr. Buer put together, it's about a 2-page item.
Got it,
Yes.
okay.
And our understanding is that something similar has been either provided to them or communicated to them
Got it,
as well.
okay, very good.
I would say that one of the key items right now that impacts the Nisqually that we should be very, very supportive of is the I-5 improvements from Mounts Road all the way down to Tumwater, particularly across the Nisqually Delta. For the Nisquallies, it is not a transportation issue. For the Nisquallies, it is a way of life issue. The Nisqually River has oxbowed very, very significantly. Matter of fact, we were supposed to go out there and get they were trying to get the canoes out there to take us out there so we could actually see what that looks like. When I say we, I mean SSMCP. But that is something that is very near and dear to them. Also, the current configuration of Interstate 5 is blocking the flow of fish coming off of the Puget Sound. So for us, you know, it's transportation, it's the movement of freight and people and, you know, the military readiness and all of that. But for the Nisquallies, it is something completely different. And also, you know, as a sovereign nation, you know, that's part of their treaty rights. And SSMCP has been very, very supportive of this initiative. Matter of fact, I can tell you that the tribe was very, very surprised how forthcoming SSMCP has and how closely that we're working with them. So I think that's something that, you know, perhaps you can, you know, emphasize at the meeting. And then, you know, quite frankly, the Oxbow will probably, if it's not addressed, will probably result in some kind of a significant issue similar to what happened down in Centralia and Chehalis a number of years ago where the water came over I-5. That's probably going to happen.
You gotta help me out with Oxbow, I don't know what that is.
So the river used to flow east to west in an area due east of, so if you're driving north on I-5 and you cross the Nisqually, you're crossing the Nisqually Delta,
Right.
the Nisqually River comes right out there and you can see the river. Probably about maybe a kilometer back to the east, it's no longer straight. It now curves.
Oh, huh.
And it's been pushed because I-5 is blocking.
Oh, okay.
There were berms that were built.
Oh.
And so the Nisqually River is being pushed back. And the river is reacting by changing its course and backing up. That's, yeah, the bridge needs to be torn out and it needs to be elevated, or some kind of a bridge or something.
Okay.
Because it doesn't flow as well.
Yep. Also, the Oxbow has a potential to have an impact. They have a school in that general area, has the potential to flood them out as well. That's a sick, but I just want to emphasize, they were really pleased that SSMCP, as well as, you know, Lakewood and Lacey are supporting on them on this. That's what we hear from staff.
And this is a no-tie thing, just to confirm, just kind of,
Yeah, just, dress casual.
okay. Mr. Boki?
So one other thing, if they're concerned about that, you may also hear about the state has been sued by the tribes and successfully about culverts. And as far as I know, we've replaced one large culvert. That was the one at Bridgeport years and years ago. It's very expensive and local governments are concerned. The counties are definitely very concerned that they'll be next in the federal court. And it really has to do with salmon passage. So we may want to figure out what our reaction would be to, we may want to say we support legislation that would help the local governments pay for, and maybe we should agree to count up our culverts and see which ones are.
Actually, and we have, the good news is that we don't have many of those outstanding issues. However, from a policy standpoint, supporting AWC in that endeavor. Would also like to point out that the lawsuit is against the state, and counties and cities have not been named yet.
Got it. Branstetter.
Yeah, at our joint meeting with the Landmarks and Heritage Board, the mayor raised the issue about some things in Lakewood that represent the history that involve the interactions between Native Americans and early settlers, as well as some of the things that predate that, when Native Americans were there. I don't know that we have any joint, any history of any joint projects with the Nisquallies in that regard, but it would be interesting to know if they have any sites within Lakewood that are of historical interest of value to them that they would like to see us look at in terms of making some recognition and probably not preservation, but educational things about it. I think that would be an item that we could ask, where they would probably know about the locations or have a feeling about locations or events, and we could then be open to working with them.
Very good.
Also, if I just might add, with all due respect to this body, the Nisqually tribe does not view you as equals. They view their equals as the state legislature and the governor, as well as Congress and the president. So just to put things in perspective, because they are a sovereign nation.
Got it. Any other questions, comments about tomorrow? Otherwise, let's go to council comments, and let's see if we can.
So it's 5 o'clock.
Yeah, that could be a challenge.
If anybody wants to ride with me, I'll be leaving here at 4:10.
4:10. Wow.
I mapped it out.
Meeting's at 5. Yeah, I'm gonna go out the back way, Steilacoom DuPont Road. And then go down and get off of Mounts Road. I'm gonna go in off of Mounts Road.
You go down Old Reservation Road,
Yep.
I mapped it out this afternoon, I figure leaving about 1600.
I would like to go with somebody here because but I'm supposed to be at Lockburn Middle School to present some check for Pierce College to students at Lockburn at 4 o'clock. They needed some council member. So I'll do that like 4 o'clock, get here by hopefully 4:15. Can I
Would you
get a
like,
ride from somebody?
we can swing by and pick you up at Hutloff.
That's at Lockburn.
I'm sorry,
At
Lockburn.
Yeah,
I'll text you tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll swing by and pick you up.
okay, or do something
But
like
if anybody else wants,
Yeah, I'm not gonna leave my car in Lockburn. I'll drive it here to City Hall.
all right, I'll meet you out front at 4:15, but
Okay.
we'll text. But if
let's
anybody
text.
else wishes to ride with me, meet here at a little after 4 PM.
Okay.
And the meeting's over at 7, correct?
It's 5 to, however, I don't know, council member, how long it will go.
All right.
Kind of go from there.
Also, they were clear, it's just the mayor, the council, and the city manager. And then they will have their tribal chair, tribal council members, and their CEO. That's it.
Great.
And I will take meeting minutes.
Very good. Mr. Boki, since we're on the issue of adult family homes, take it from here on your council comments.
Okay, so I went to the North Lakewood Neighborhood Association. I think that was Tuesday night. Probably about 50 people there. A lot of new folks because a lot of these, we've dealt with the 4th edition for so long, and those folks have been there a long, long time. These people are really were organized by the Nextdoor Oakbrook app, which some of you may have, or some of you may have Nextdoor Lakewood or something like that. on that app. And it was those folks really that, and they're almost all new. I mean, there were a few people I had seen before, like the fourth edition folks, but very few. I mean, it was almost all new people, which I thought was very positive. You know, very upset, and that's putting it mildly. I mean, it is a visceral, just really, really frustrated, in, you know, I tried to negotiate that as best I could, right? We got crushed in court, and so, and I discussed that. I actually went back and went kind of through the history of the last year or so and kind of how we got to where we were at, and told them that as far as we knew, you know, the sex predator moving in was new. Several of the people, I mean, the one time they kind of got loud was several of the people really were like, when they asked me, are you going to appeal? And I said, we're looking at it. You know, there's things we need to consider. And that didn't go over well with some folks. You know, they want action. They're extremely frustrated. I think Cairo and Como have reported on it. I'm not sure they know what to do. I'm worried they're going to start selling, which I think is the goal of the governor anyway in DSHS. And then Representative Muri was there, which I appreciate, and he got up, and I didn't get to hear him tonight. And he talked about it. I don't know if he presented any you know, supported any specific legislation.
Not so much.
Clearly, the scope of the legislation has increased because before it was the density requirements and those kind of things that we were most worried about. I think fair share is an important one because I think it brings in the whole county. The fair share notion is something that everybody in Pierce County understands, every elected official, and as soon as you say fair share, they understand that. They know, because on the criminal side it was a problem for so long. So I think the fair share argument is a salient one, and that's one track, and I think that it could probably get. I think the distance requirement's going to be difficult, but we still need to get that. And then I think we're going to have to discuss, you know, the sex predator one. I mean, it's just really. And the issue is, and I talked with the group. I said, well, you know, we've been told in a couple of occasions that these people are literally, you know, they're non-ambulatory, or if they are, they're not very. But that's really cold comfort, right? You have an elected official standing there going, well, we've been told that maybe they are, you know, and it just is really cold comfort. It's not, you know. It's the best I could do in the situation, and I had to admit to him, you know, we really don't know because we don't have the right to know. Accordingly, apparently, if they're ambulatory or not. So they have to report. The officer was there. I asked her. They try to check on them every month, the twos and threes. So I guess by then we would know the condition. But so. Good meeting from the standpoint of citizen participation. I do think that the next step for them is going to be a difficult step because they're asking me, like, well, how do we organize this thing? Who do we need to talk to? They understand the governor and that kind of thing. So they're going to have to be coached a little bit, and I don't know how to. I mean, you need to talk to your representatives, and you need to pick up on pieces of legislation, and I even told him, I said, well, you know, that the industry is very well organized. They know exactly what they want, which is they want more people in there, they want to be paid more, and they want less restrictions. So, And I did say, you know, there's a number of good adult family homes. I mean, but for whatever reason, they've decided to take this route of taking in sex predators, which I think I find interesting the more I think about it, that they would jeopardize the reputation of the whole industry by taking that on. I find it, I don't know if they've completely thought this through as to why you would change your whole industry, your model, to chase a few more dollars, and you know, gain the reputation of being a place where there might be dangerous people living there, where you went from disabled adults to and the elderly to now, you know, sex predators. And I guess I don't understand that, but anyway, so that's what happened there. If you got any questions, I can try to answer them, but good turnout. I stopped by the Fab thing on Friday night at the McGavick Center. Unfortunately, it was kind of late, and so they were starting their movie, and I looked at the art. The authors were pretty much gone. So and I'm glad I stopped by, because they said, "Well, stop by Saturday," and I said, "I don't know that you know my schedule. I lose control of it." Well, sure enough, you know, on Saturday it was just that, and so I'm glad I stopped by, and it looked like a good effort. But again, it was kind of late. I don't believe that I'm going to make the tribal meeting. I mean, I think my day job is going to hold me there. I will be here Wednesday night. What time are we starting Wednesday? 6. Okay, I should be able to make that. I sent you an email. I'm asking a favor. First year ever that Communities and Schools of Lakewood is having a auction at the Tacoma Country Club Friday night at 6.
This Friday?
And we have seats available.
What time?
Mr. Branstetter said he couldn't make it at 6 o'clock. I got your ticket.
Okay, I should be able to. Okay.
Just let me know. I probably need to know in the next day or two, because they're doing a head count.
Okay.
Bring Gail.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. And then next Tuesday, I just want to remind the county council meeting is out at the prestigious Jason Whalen Event Center. I was sitting in a meeting, and they said they were going over the agenda, and Deputy Mayor Whalen is the speaker.
Really?
To talk all about. So is he going to do talking points? Because typically they get like 5 minutes or 3 minutes to talk about how great everything is in the city of Lakewood.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the talking points.
He does, yeah.
Oh, my calendar, when is that?
You're killing me. 5 o'clock at the event center. And you might want to tell them, because I had to fess up, well, someone said no bathrooms, no water, and I'm like, it's on its way. So you might want to give them the date that'll be all ready to go.
Tuesday the 16th?
Tuesday the 9th.
Yeah, I didn't have it down for the 16th.
And I'm the last remark, because I'm pleased as punch with how Lakewood Drive is going. They're really going great guns. They're paving, and there was a lot of work to do, because they had that down to, you know, I think they were digging bodies out from Pioneer days or something. They were so deep there in that first part. So I'm really looking forward to having a nice roadway and getting the rest of it done.
2 weeks early.
2 weeks early, yeah.
Okay.
Did a good
Done.
job. Thank you.
Very good.
Paul, what time's that event Friday night?
6. Okay, all right, very good. Ms. Moss, are you sure, other than your waving of the arm of the big auction on Friday night, that we're gonna hold you to? Yeah, perfect.
So just so you have a number in your
Yeah. With Mr. Branstetter's visa. Mr. Branstetter.
I attended the in this room here, the South Sound 911 Policy Board, which the major elements of that meeting were to have some really preliminary discussions about some options of changing the governance of South Sound 911. Right now, South Sound 911 is a loosely organized business that is run by, according to an ILA between 5 cities and the West Pierce Fire, although it serves the entire county, okay, and does that. And under that ILA, certain risks and liabilities accrue to the cities and to West Pierce. And so there's been some work looking at doing a change in structure. I don't know how quickly that's going to progress. One of the goals is to provide the ability for South Sound 911 to actually own real estate and property and to be able to issue debt themselves as opposed to have one of the member cities do it or the county, and to give them some greater legal standing, okay, to be able to go and do that. But at some point in time, that'll come back to the 6 jurisdictions that are currently the owners, if you will, in the ILA to be able to go and do that. And certainly some change needs to happen. I'm not sure exactly what the final legal structure is to make it a legal entity that will allow us to still have a role, but our role will be because we are a sizable police department, not because we're one of the proprietary cities being able to go and do that. And we'll still have some role on whatever governance board there is to be able to go and do that. But there'll be others that will also get roles who are served from other parts of the county to do that. So I think this is something that is going to I think in 2019 is the goal for wanting to do it, because they want to change the structure prior to having a brand new building and moving into it and beginning to really operate in a more direct way of where they're responsible to all the police agencies as customers, but give all the customers some say as to how things are going. I did go stop by the FAB. Like Mr. Boki, I arrived later in the day on Saturday, so that much of the folks who were the authors and the vendors were not, had left earlier. They didn't stay for the evening. But all of the folks who were engaged in putting it on all seemed to feel that it was a worthwhile effort that can grow into being something significant in future years. And so that was positive, and and I cast my vote for what I thought were good photographs and good art. Okay, I'm going to have to check back in to see, how that played out. But all in all, it was a good thing, and I think that for the participation this year, the venue was sized okay. It wouldn't have to grow too much, though, to outgrow.
Really? That's great.
That venue, particularly if it grows with respect to vendors in addition to some other things, the way that they had it structured inside the building. That's all I have.
Very good. Ms. Barth.
you. So I did meet with a couple of citizens last Wednesday morning to talk about the adult family homes. And they were none too happy, just to put it mildly. I did give them copies of the reference material off of our website, off the city website, and I printed out several of those, gave them to them, asked them to, study up and talked about the town hall meeting that we would have. I have commitments from the people that were there to reach out to their neighbors, reach out to their HOAs, and first educate themselves, then reach out. I really do think a question and answer, FAQ, would be helpful. I appreciate Mike's comments about not wanting to tip our hand one way or the other, but people are starved for information. They really are. And so my recommendation is to try and put something, that we should try and put something together that would be of assistance. I did go to the FAB event Saturday, and there were tons of people there. I went during the day, probably 1-ish, and watched a movie, talked to, I don't know how many people I talked to, looked at the art. It was just really well attended, and I really think that the people that put that on should be recognized. I think it would be nice to bring them in and recognize them publicly here. So it was a good event. Yeah, it was really crowded.
Mr. Simpson.
Thank you. Just a couple of items here. I won't reiterate what Paul said about last Tuesday night's neighborhood association meeting. It was a good meeting. I was surprised by the number of people. But anyway, I'm not going to go over that. I think Marie's comments and my comments about where we go from here are well taken. Enough said on that. What I would like to point out here before I turn it over to the deputy mayor is, I've said this before on several occasions, and I'm going to say it again. The staff from this council should be very proud of itself tonight. We turned a corner. If this is a football game, we're in their secondary. That sub-area plan and what we passed tonight, we are turning a corner. And it's going to be a long run, 20 yards, 20 years, however you want to look at it. But we turned a corner tonight, and I think we should, I know I do, take a moment just to reflect on that, because that's exactly what we are here to do. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Well, thank you, and I will follow on that comment that I too am pleased that we have a plan, which was, again, the headline from the EDB newsletter that went out to all the investors and major players in the Tacoma-Pierce County area, and I think that's just great news to communicate. It's very positive. And then, of course, we heard tonight in public comment, we spent some time tonight talking about the things that kind of get in our way, the distractions and the detractors, and those are, frankly, they're frustrating to all of us, and they're frustrating to staff, and they take time away, and I think we just need to do the best we can to nip it in the bud. And part of that is with a very effective communication piece. I think the mayor says it well, mo better is the way to go with regard to communications, more and better. And I think we're doing a good job, but we just need to get more, because it's obvious that the message, for some reason, isn't as transparent or communicated as well as perhaps it might be as to the realities of what's going on. But it's a complicated issue, and I get it. Speaking of communication, so I was going to ask you, Mr. Caulfield, how are we communicating support for the Lakewood Library levy that's coming up? I know we passed the resolution. How is that going out so voters can say,
So that's been turned over to their committee that's actively campaigning in support of that, and they're using that resolution to say, hey, Lakewood supports that. So there's really not much that we need to do.
Very good. The Youth Summit information tonight I thought was really interesting, and I would hope that we could make that event more meaningful for them by our participation. I know a few years back, we had kind of a little mini summit that we dealt with a couple of issues on race and diversity, and we actually went up to, I think it was the Science Center in Seattle. We don't necessarily have to go on a field trip, but I think we could do some really interesting policy work or meaningful subject matter with them, with our participation that they may really enjoy, I think. Maybe they don't want to sit around with a bunch of old people, but you know, it might be kind of interesting for them, and we should be involved in it. On to the budget issue. I think it's a great document to start off with. My thought is on the communication piece, and maybe you guys are already doing this, but we could take this budget message that the manager put out and not only post that on the city's website and the Facebook page, but publish it in the Suburban Times. And I wouldn't even mind, I'm gonna take it to my staff tomorrow and have them copy it or an email, because I send stuff like this out to constituents and say, look at the great things we're doing. This is a great communication piece. You know, at the end of the day, there'll be some modifications as we go through the process probably, but it's a great communication piece to tell people what we're doing and to invite them with the schedule that you've put out for the various meetings that we have in the public comment period and the public hearing that's going to happen, just to get it out there. Because it's, you know, you spent a lot of great time working on it. It's a good piece, and I think it communicates really well the plan and where we're headed for the next 2 years. So the more we can leverage that, the better we're all going to be. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you very much for enduring almost 3 hours of good time together. We'll see you tomorrow. Adjourn.